Woo. Woo. From the broadcast at the harbor, the voice of guarding Marine came immediately. Emergency. Supernova Straw Hat Pirates raided the bay. Hearing this broadcast, countless people looked at the ship that broke into the battlefield in shock. What? Sengoku was startled, and stared at the distant sea in shock. Countless Marines and pirates also stretched their bodies apart, and with the help of peripheral vision, they detected the shadow of the ship rushing into the slag. Unaware that their actions attracted a lot of attention, Usopp and Chopper of the Straw Hats burst into tears and shouted at Luffy, "Hey! Luffy, are you crazy? This is the core of the battlefield. Although it is the core, there are other Whitebeard pirates around, and we are not alone. This is good news." Sanji looked around. "Although it's good news," Chopper cried. Ignoring the speeches of the members, after arriving in the bay, Luffy had already jumped onto the lion's head of the Sunshine, looking for his brother. Under Luffy's eyes, on the execution platform above the center, he quickly found the ace he was looking for. A knowing smile appeared on his face, and then he raised his chest, and after taking a breath, he quickly shouted, "Hey! Luffy!" Not long after, Ace's cry was also heard. Not only saw his brother, but also heard his voice, Luffy seemed to activate the moving calendar. He clenched his hands into fists and put them on his legs. "Wait for me, Ace, I will definitely rescue you." After shouting, Luffy jumped directly from the Sunshine, and the rest of the members also jumped all the way when they saw this. Only Usopp, Chopper and Hughes stayed to watch the ship. "It's your family again." Seeing his friend's grandson enter the arena again, and also as an enemy, Sengoku yelled dissatisfiedly. Garp also had an expression of astonishment, and then shouted with his head in his hands, "Luffy! How did you come here? That kid, is that the younger brother that Ace values?" Whitebeard also looked at the figure running sideways. His personality was more impulsive than his big brother. Before the other party was offered a bounty, on the Moby Dick, their family members often heard Ace mention this name. After the reward was offered, Ace, who was traveling alone, turned around to announce the good news to them with a phone bug, which is enough to show how much he attaches importance to this brother. But that Straw Hat. Whitebeard is very familiar, that is, the one of his old rival Luogia, and also the logo of Shanks. In other words, this guy is the new era they chose, Whitebeard couldn't help muttering. Straw Hat crew, who joined the war as a foreign force, did not fully grasp the hockey of the New World, faced with a large number of elite personnel from naval headquarters, but relied on its original ability and aura. It quickly attracted everyone's attention, because of the brilliance. Rubber. Machine gun. Several fist shadows directly blasted away the school-level elites who were blocking in front of them. Thunderstrike. Grade 3 ground meat. The other two major forces of the Straw Hats followed Luffy and quickly eliminated 3 or 4 Marines. Sengoku snorted coldly and looked at the Straw Hats who kept moving forward, surrounded by slightly inferior school-level Marines. The closer he was, the stronger the General Marine. He wanted to see what kind of splash this unexpected Straw Hat could make. And just like Ace, Garp looked at Luffy struggling forward with a sad face. The battlefield here is far from being able to join the current Luffy. The attacks from both sides continued. With more and more Marines blocking the way, only Enel and Sanji of the original Straw Hat group kept up with Luffy. The rest were hindered and forced to disperse. During this period, facing more and more powerful opponents, even if he used the second and third gears to keep moving forward, he still left many wounds on his body. Thanks to the knowledgeable color and the armed color with many directions, the injury is not enough to affect his progress. But seeing how his younger brother was injured trying to save him, Ace couldn't help roaring when he remembered the oath he had promised Sabo to protect Luffy. Asking why the other party came here, using merciless words, trying to get the other party out of this dangerous area. Naturally, Luffy responded with the same emotional outburst. The sentence that "I will save you even if I die," not only brought tears to Ace's eyes, but also won the approval of many Whitebeard pirates in an instant. Seeing that the other party's words seemed to boost the morale of the other party and played an unexpected role, Sengoku couldn't help but directly announced Luffy's life experience. Don't be affected by a mere rookie pirate. That Straw Hat Luffy is a brother sworn brother to Fire Fist Ace. Although he is not the son of the One Piece King, he also inherits the blood of the world's major criminals, and he is the good of the world's crimes. His father is the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Dorag. After Sengoku finished speaking, there was a silence on the battlefield, and almost all Marines noticed the Straw Hat that was nominated. Another shocking secret comparable to Ace's identity caused turmoil on the Saboti archipelago, which was full of reporters. Shichibukai, Blackbeard and Doflamingo on the battlefield smiled deeply. Bartholomew Big Bear looked deeply at everyone in the straw hats. In his little consciousness, there was still a task that had to be completed. That guy. He must not be allowed to live. The Marines glared and looked at the straw hats moving forward, holding up their weapons one after another, full of intent to kill. More and more Marines are attacking Straw Hat Luffy, and more Whitebeard pirates are here to help Luffy fight the enemies on their way. Even the captains of the series took the initiative to attack the Marines of the Rear Admiral Vice Admiral level in front of Luffy. Not satisfied with the current battle situation, Sengoku's face gradually became gloomy. Although Marine still has a big advantage, uncertain external factors are the trouble. Especially among the Shichibukai who saw the top combat power, Wable was the only one who slaughtered the members of the Whitebeard regiment with full firepower, and the others were more or less paddling. Let the pacifists play. Sengoku directed towards the contact bug. In the case of not falling into a disadvantage, Sengoku has no need to pinch the phone bug, and it happens to let people all over the world see the new power of world government and Marine. Under Sengoku's order, Marine once again mobilized people to join the battlefield. And when it suddenly appeared on the edge of the battlefield, the secret weapon that Sengoku hoped to change the situation of the battle was projected to every corner of the world through Marineford's lens, causing countless exclamations. No. What did I see? Why are there so many tyrants? What did Marine do? What appeared in front of the world were several humanoid weapons that were exactly the same in appearance and height as the 7 warlords of the sea tyrant Bartholomew Kuma. And when the pirates in the square saw these big bears, their hearts sank immediately. The tyrant Shang injured Ozzy with a single blow just now, I can still vividly remember it. Marine's power has stretched the strength of the Whitebeard pirates. Now Marine doesn't know what means to get a few people like Big Bear. If they all have the same combat power as Shichibukai. All the pirates felt chills in their hearts, and they didn't dare to think about it anymore. The emergence of pacifists has brought great psychological pressure to the pirates, and as they enter the battlefield, they will automatically identify pirates with a bounty of over 100 million, plus they can launch powerful laser cannons from their palms and mouths. Immediately, the pirates suffered heavy casualties. Bastard, die for me. Facing repeated bombings by pacifists, a pirate with a bounty of over 100 million escaped the first round of explosions, came to one of the pacifists, and slashed at his chest. Zila. There was a steel-like sound, and the pirate was dumbfounded that his knife, which was enough to cut gold and iron, could only cut through the clothes of the pacifist. Through the torn clothes, one could see where the blade touched the flesh, and sparks even popped out. A pirate with a body made of special metal and a bounty of less than 500 million can't even break the defense. This is why the Marine and world government dare to invest in pacifists, and it is also a fake pacifist. The reason for the highest level of warships. The blow was fruitless, and before the pirate could react, the pacifist had already locked on to the enemy in front of him, opened his mouth wide, and the laser wave directly shot through the opponent. The over 100 million level pirate, who was covered in smoke, fell heavily in front of the pacifists. For a time, because of the intrusion of the Straw Hats, the momentum of the Whitebeard regiment has grown into a precarious situation. Now that the battle has been fought, the decline of the Whitebeard pirates has become obvious. The momentum of the Whitebeard pirates is declining. The pirates who failed to break out of the siege after several charges are no longer as powerful as they were at the beginning. It seems that the war is about to end. Bad wine, Bardock said with a smile. The war is over. She, you think too much, that man, but you haven't made a move yet. Doflamingo said meaningfully. Obviously, Bardock didn't know who Doflamingo was referring to. He looked towards Whitebeard, and immediately saw Whitebeard preparing to make a move. The addition of pacifists, coupled with the multiple blows of the number and strength of Marine, has made the Whitebeard pirates exhausted. Knowing this, Whitebeard also knew that he had to play as the master. Whitebeard punched with all his strength and blasted forward. With his fist as the center, the atmosphere split open again, and the range and speed of the split covered the entire Crescent Bay with an extremely fast trend. Especially the Marine and Giant lineup at the front were directly blown away by this blow. Accompanied by terrifying howls and loud noises, the frozen sea around Aokiji shattered, and even the cannons deployed on the shore in the town were directly destroyed. The ice surface was broken, and although they lost their foothold, so did the pacifists, so Zon Taomaru had to quickly transfer the humanoid weapons back to the shore. And this creates a time to take a breather. Taking a deep breath, Whitebeard held up the pheasant knife and shouted at the family members on the boat, "Everyone, rescue Ace," and rushed to the square in one breath. As he spoke, he waved the pheasant knife again. The atmosphere was once again overwhelmed and burst into cracks. The violent impact once again lifted many Marines away. Go. Kill the square. The Moby Dick slammed into the edge of the square. A group of pirates named Whitebeard rushed towards the only gap like a torrent like a chicken blood. Finally, under layers of protection, the pirates entered the land of Marineford. But this also means that more powerful people are waiting here. It's the Green Bull Admiral. Everyone looked at the man who was walking to the front of the gap with excited and reverent eyes, and quickly seemed to think of something, and hurriedly called everyone to retreat more than half the distance. Green Bull put his hands in his pockets, looking at the Moby Dick approaching forward. Under its feet, there seemed to be particles brimming with vitality, floating around it. Caw caw caw, and the ground around the green cow began to collapse, and a large number of trees and flowers appeared strangely, uprooted, and expanded rapidly after breaking through the ground. Almost in the blink of an eye, a dense forest was formed, and even the green students became part of it. It's just right, let you group of villains become my nourishment. Under control, a large number of tree trunks began to bundle together, and then formed a huge arm. The wooden palms were bigger than the entire giant vice admiral, and dozens of armament hockey covered them with the mighty armament hockey, blatantly smashing towards the crowd that Moby Dick came down from. As if propping up the sky, several extremely huge plant palms, carrying a howling hurricane, struck with overwhelming momentum. The surrounding land that has been squeezed is turned into a piece of dryness like being absorbed by nutrients, and at the same time, the swept-away forest is becoming more and more lush. A tall figure slammed into the forest on the board. Shine clash. Under the sun, diamonds shone with noble luster, entangled with a powerful armed attack, and the captain of the 3rd Division, Diamond George, slammed into the attack of the Green Bull. Chao Zi's strong body, combined with the hardness of the diamond, directly shook the wooden palm, and there were amazing huge cracks. But it didn't collapse because of this. Wood palm quickly returned to its original shape, and with the help of other attacks from behind, it instantly blasted Josie away. Fortunately, everyone caught Josie's backwards body in time, otherwise he might be blown into the sea directly. The next moment, Whitebeard slammed towards the Green Bull's attack with a fist condensed with shocking power. Boom. Crack, click, click. With a muffled snort, a spider web-like crack appeared in the atmosphere. Boom. The terrifying vibration force turned into a shockwave and circled towards Daomu. With a shock more terrifying than diamonds, several forest hands collapsed in an instant. Even the strong resilience known as nature, under the invisible shockwave, all collapsed like withered. Whitebeard finally launched a strong desire to attack and completely attracted the attention of everyone on the battlefield. Therefore, no one noticed that the originally calm sea surface began to hit waves higher and higher, and each wave became more violent. And this is a sign of the coming tsunami. The sea level is high and the waves are constantly rising. At this time, the Whitebeard regiment finally arrived on the ground of Marineford, and it has already welcomed all the marine attacks. Brush. The red figure flew over. With hot magma condensed in his hand, Akainu swung towards Whitebeard violently. The atmosphere and space are distorted under this extremely high temperature, and the earth is even reduced to ashes under the research of dripping. Clang. The pheasant knife had a sharp blade, full of powerful vibrations, and then collided with the magma, sparking a series of sparks. The atmosphere seemed to be split into two halves by these two top-level energies. The powerful Qi Jin swept away like a violent storm, and could not stop spreading to the surrounding battlefields. Under the bombardment, after all, the terrifying earthquake was better than the magma. Akainu could not stop pulling back. But in the next moment, the trees brimming with vitality turned into a majestic and terrifying wooden golem, condensing full fists, roaring and attacking Whitebeard. Seeing this, Whitebeard's palm showed a white halo, and he was about to punch the incoming attack. The dazzling light flickered, but it only took less than a second. Two laser beams with terrifying penetrating power blasted out two obvious blood holes on the fast sun Whitebeard from Kizaru's raised index finger. Under the pain, even the attack in his hand weakened a bit. After colliding with the Green Bull's attack, Whitebeard staggered back a few steps holding the pheasant knife. Whitebeard, who was about to fight back with the pheasant knife, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His body arched involuntarily, his big hands were covering his chest, his expression was a bit ugly. Not only was the chest attacked and pierced, but it also involved extremely serious injuries. But at this time, there are no capable sons who can help resist Admiral's attack. Father. Marco yelled anxiously when he saw this. "You despicable guys, you beat the few with the more." The cyan undead flame burned more intensely, and suddenly turned into a powerful attack, hitting several vice admirals who blocked him in front. "We will not be kind to you pirates." The flying squirrel and the ghost spider quickly slashed out with armed swords, resisting Marco's angry blow. Basically, the captains who can compete against the admiral class in a short period of time are also restricted like Marco. In addition to the addition of a monster-level admiral, the conscription marine is more conspicuous because it has increased the number of vice admirals. And the white group's offensive was restricted, which meant that the Straw Hats and others were also restricted. This is a place of justice, and you pirates must not be allowed to act recklessly again. A slightly old voice came from the front. The regrouped Straw Hats and others looked around, and it was Marine Vice Admiral and Chief of Staff Crane standing in front of them. "Get out of the way. Old woman, get out of the way." With Luffy in the second gear, a quick shave is to rush in front of the crane. Now as long as the opponent is the guy who prevents him from saving the big brother, he doesn't care whether the opponent is a boy, a girl, young or old. He really doesn't respect the old man at all, and he looks like he's in a hurry, just like that guy Garp. Crane Vice Admiral just tilted his head slightly. Knowledgeable Color easily dodged the Straw Hat attack, but one hand was already grabbing Luffy's extended arm. Invisible power is also launched from the hands of Crane Vice Admiral. Luffy's whole body suddenly began to spin crazily, as if the clothes were being sucked into the washing machine. In the blink of an eye, like washed clothes, the body became flattened and fell to the ground. "Damn. What is this? I can't use any more strength." The flat Luffy yelled, but his body couldn't return to its original state with consciousness. Luffy. Seeing this, Enel, Sanji and others rushed forward. But in a second, after being touched by Crane Vice Admiral, several people also fell to the ground, turning into paper figures like Luffy. The veteran Vice Admiral made a move, and it was too easy to deal with these newcomers' Straw Hats. "Don't worry." Crane Vice Admiral looked at the Straw Hats on the ground. "I will put you in Impel down, so that you won't be fatal in this battle. You don't have to be nervous about Vince Moke's kid, he won't do anything to you, after all, you have certain special rights." Sanji's pupils narrowed sharply, and then he gritted his teeth unwillingly. Woo. 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 Suddenly, another warning sound that resounded through Marlene Fando came from the mouth of the bay. Sengoku, who was beginning to be satisfied with the changes in the battlefield, looked out of the mouth of the bay with a puzzled expression. "The tsunami is coming. Comply with the shouts of the watchmen." On everyone's terrified faces, a huge tsunami far above the sea level was surging at an astonishing speed, overwhelming the sky. "Is that a tsunami? How can that be? Clearly Whitebeard." Many marine soldiers turned pale with fright, and even the pirates changed their expressions drastically. The huge wave, which is already hundreds of meters high, is pressed down. Whether it is a marine or a pirate, it will inevitably be submerged by the tsunami in an instant. This is obviously not a natural phenomenon, but man-made. At present, apart from Whitebeard, the only ones who can cause this kind of tsunami are the Snake Princess of the Flying Kingdom, and that man. Sengoku's face turned extremely ugly in an instant. If there is another leader of the four emperors, the direction of this war will definitely be beyond his control. Crash. Huge waves with a height of hundreds of meters invaded, and the shadow of the sun alone covered the entire bay. But it did not directly cross the bay and hit the square. Seeing that the situation would envelop himself and his sons, Whitebeard clenched his fist and knocked back. Under the shattered airshock, the tsunami was directly shaken back. When everyone thought that the tsunami might be resolved in this way, a scorching heat sprayed from the altitude of tens of thousands of meters directly blasted to the center of the tsunami at the highest point. Boom. Violent explosive sound. The rebound of the shockwave was resolved. A huge tsunami suddenly fell. Between the whistling, the terrifying impact has already smashed to the coast some distance away from the bay. Although it didn't directly cover Marineford, the huge waves hit by the height directly drove several waves of high-rise waves. The warships and ships moored not far away were all submerged by the huge waves like the mouth of an abyss. Boom. Boom. The buildings in the bay were shattered, and the mouth of the bay outside Marin Vanduo Square was directly hit by the seawater. The turbulent waves, one wave after another, continued to roll, shocking the bay back to the original ocean area. Countless ships were crushed and broken. Under the tumbling waves, Shiki crashed into the bay and was directly carried to the square. With good luck, 3/5 of the ship's level was preserved. Only the Moby Dick, which had almost landed, was not seriously damaged, and nearly half of the other 3 auxiliary ships and 1,000 Sunny were destroyed, showing a precarious shipwreck. Everyone in the Straw Hat group couldn't help but shed tears because of this. And what's worse, there are still many ships under his command, all of which were swallowed by the bottom of the sea and became like food in their stomachs. The sudden heat caused many people to look up in the direction of the attack. Almost at the same time, Admiral, Whitebeard, Shichibukai and other top players on the battlefield raised their heads and looked into the air at the same time. It seems that seeing the actions of these strong men, the phone bug faithfully broadcast every scene of the battlefield, and changed the perspective again, so that people all over the world can see the scene in the sky. The next moment, everyone saw that jaw-dropping scene. A huge shadow broke through the thick clouds and appeared over Marineford. Finally, under the horrified eyes of the whole world, the black shadow floating in the sky pierced through the clouds, revealing its true face to the people below. What's in the sky? Why is there something in the sky? It's a dragon. That's the 4 emperors, Kaido. Located at the end of the cloud, it is a cyan dragon that exudes unparalleled power and is looking down. And the dragon's breath just now was in his hands, 4 Kaido of the beasts. But compared to the majestic blue dragon hovering in the clouds and mist, more people are paying attention to the dozen or so flying islands next to the blue dragon. Kaido can also use the flame cloud to manipulate the islands to float in the air, but the dozens of small islands in front of him are not supported by any flame clouds. This ability. Before the others could react, the faces of almost everyone in the upper echelon of Marine had changed. Only the lion fruit who controls the sky can do this easily. The strongest king of that new era, Air General Motor. Sengoku's face immediately became solemn, and the flight to Sky Island proved that the previous tsunami was not a coincidence. All heavy artillery, turn your guns and aim at the sky. The strongest man in the new era is here. Without saying a word, Sengoku directly ordered the marine position to turn its muzzle and aim at the island in the sky. As if sensing the movement below, in the next second, more than a dozen islands formed a circle, and then they were completely assembled together to form a huge island like Marineford. Marineford falls. Almost all the marine pirates below are wrapped. The island is an island. The island is falling. Seeing the island falling with the momentum of destroying everything, Whitebeard, who was fighting the 3 admirals, also became solemn. Because of this, it's going to cover almost everyone in Marineford in sea. At this time, even Doflamingo, who knew in advance that Maud would come, couldn't laugh. Block it. Sengoku roared, and the golden light flashed directly into the form of a giant Buddha. With a terrifying shockwave wrapped around his palm, Moonwalk jumped up and blasted towards the terrifying island that landed in the air. The tremor sounded like a torrent of bells in a deep mountain, directly shaking the surrounding space, and for a while, the impact of the island that landed from the high altitude was slowed down a lot. It's just that facing an island as huge as Marineford, Sengoku's ability can only reach this level after all. But at the next moment, all the other high-level marines also blocked it, and even many pirates did the same. In the face of this island-destroying disaster, no one could be alone, and there was a tacit understanding, and they all turned around and attacked the island above. Great Eruption. Storm Pheasant's Mouth. 8-foot Chong Guyu, Forbidden to Hate. The 4 admirals shot together, and Logia's terrifying elemental energy tilted towards the air in an instant with almost no effort left. At the same time, there is Whitebeard, the only one who can stop alone. When the target was the island, without the scruples of the surrounding suns, Whitebeard gritted his teeth, endured the pain and exhaustion in his body, and went straight up with all his strength. With Whitebeard's fist as the center, the atmosphere split again, and the range and speed of the split covered the crescent bay in front of him at an extremely fast trend. Under the attack of countless top powerhouses, accompanied by a terrifying whistling sound, a loud noise was enough to destroy the entire terrifying island of Marineford. It disintegrated directly in the air, shattered into countless tiny stones, and flew to the distant sea surface on the same day. There was a squall like a meteor swarm falling in the bay. The island. The island is shattered. But, is this still human power? Many people felt lucky to survive the catastrophe, but more people who came back to their senses looked at the sky with even more fear. This blow even gave the people of the world who didn't see the battle between Maud and Whitebeard with their own eyes, and felt the despair and suffocation directly through the live video bug. Ooh. The cyan dragon flying in the sky began to descend, accompanied by Kaido's characteristic mocking laughter. This is the first time Lousy sees Marine and pirates attacking together. It's a perfect opening for the show. After Kaido pulled the dragon body closer, the king standing on its dragon head completely caught everyone's eyes. Fly. Air Admiral. Therefore, not only naval headquarters, but almost all the people watching the live broadcast all over the world shouted in shock at the sudden upheaval. No way. The strongest king actually participated in the Marlon Vander War? Is Marine about to crash? The world is going to be destroyed. God. The reporters started frantically dialing the phone bug towards the headquarters, while the residents covered their heads with their hands, screaming in panic. Falling back to the execution platform with Garp, Sengoku's face was ugly, and he immediately gave instructions to the contact bug. Immediately, turn off all live broadcasts. This kind of situation that cannot guarantee the victory of the war must not be broadcast to the outside world, otherwise the face of naval headquarters will definitely suffer unpredictable heavy damage. But Sengoku's face was both shocked and gloomy when the contact bug replied. Marshal Sengoku, the live broadcast cannot be turned off now, after all, I have only just played. Motor smiled while holding the contact phone. It's not just a contact phone bug, but around it, there are also live video bugs that can be manipulated. Previously, Doflamingo used string fruit to lock them. After Mod's arrival, he can directly lock them with fluttering ability. Beast Kaido. Air Admiral Mortar. Anyone who saw those two figures in the sky could not maintain a calm mood. It was originally just a public execution incident against the Whitebeard pirates. No one would have thought that the situation would develop to such an unrecognizable point. The arrival of the two four emperors. One of them is the strongest person who has the ability to destroy the world. Recruit Marine couldn't stop trembling in fear, and the veteran generals even showed ugly faces in fear. The strength balance that could be maintained or even crushed before was completely broken by this sudden lineup. Sengoku's eyes were tearing, and the veins on his forehead were throbbing. The anger in his eyes was enough to burn through the two people in the sky. Whether it's Kaido or Mord, these guys are not friends or partners with the Whitebeard pirates. But there is no doubt that they, who were rewarded by the world government, have something that must be enemies with Marine. Aokiji let out a breath of cold air slowly. This is really troublesome. Kizaru and the Green Bull smacked their lips, and the previously relaxed expression also slowly faded away. The one who was most annoyed by this was Akainu. The hot lava in his hand was already flowing around the ground according to his mood, making the sound of high temperature and corrosion. Which one? Although he was smiling, a few drops of cold sweat appeared on Doflamingo's face, because he always felt that if Marine and Whitebeard hadn't blocked the blow just now, he would have been completely destroyed by his subjects. Thinking of this, Doflamingo couldn't help clenching his fists, and then loosened them again. Kaido. Mod. What are you doing here? Sengoku stood on the execution platform with a serious and angry face. This incident should have nothing to do with the two of you. He really wanted to speak against the world government, but the two of them were obviously not afraid of the so-called world government and Marine. One is a notorious lunatic, and the other is a terrifying man who can dominate the direction of the war. Of course I'm here to see with my own eyes, a world-class event that shocked me. Motor showed a nasty smile, and waved the image worm in his hand. By the way, let the world see some interesting things. Hearing this, Sengoku and the others turned pale and looked at Mod with gritted teeth. This is blatantly provoking their Marine. After coming to the war, Kaido, who has long been itchy, doesn't care so much. This is a battlefield where the strong are everywhere. A fair place where only force decides everything. With Mord using his abilities to stabilize himself in midair, Kaido smiled flamboyantly, and fell straight down from a height of 100 meters in the form of a human and beast. Boom. Boom. Huge potholes were blasted out, as if the whole square couldn't help but tremble. Holding a mace, Kaido slowly walked out of the pothole, and the feared crowd around them retreated to an open space of tens of meters. Come on. This battlefield that has attracted the attention of the world. The momentum of the whole body was concentrated, and the horrified conqueror's haki rushed out crazily. The pitch-black fluctuations directly covered the entire Marin Fando. Treated differently, several pirates and Marines fell to the ground with their eyes wide open. Kaido doesn't care what his status is, what he wants is to wipe out those so-called weak people. For the strong, the regiment is meaningful for him to enjoy in this unscrupulous battle. And this is obviously an advantage for Marines. After all, in terms of elites, the number of Marines is definitely more and higher than that of pirates. Not to mention that this is the base camp of the naval headquarters. Suddenly, Whitebeard opened his eyes. Ultimate's Conqueror's haki is up against it. Boom. Like a materialized sphere, one black and one red, they kept pushing away under the confrontation, and were gradually moved to the Marine's sphere of influence by the stronger Whitebeard. Here, it's Marlene Fando. You pirates are not allowed to act recklessly. Sengoku roared, and the equally terrifying Conqueror's Haki roared out. Buzz. Red, blue, and black lightning kept intertwining violently in Marlene Fando, and spread to thousands of meters overseas. Hoo-hoo. The violent hurricane kept sweeping through. Interesting. Seeing this, Maud smiled slightly. Naturally, it is impossible to see the rare top Conqueror's collision. The same powerful Conqueror's Haki blasted towards the center below. Buzz. The 4 Conqueror's Haki are completely hedged together, as if the number of times has reached the limit. The colliding Conqueror's Haki disappeared, and invisible fluctuations swept from the center to the surroundings. The turbulent sea surface was brought to the outside of the bay from the outside and inside in an instant, and it rushed back again shortly after. Substantial cracks gushed out from around Marlene Fando. Buildings collapsed in the rear, and the ground was cracked. Countless pirates and marines fell powerlessly. The terrifying momentum, like the wind of death, blows through the crowd, and half of them fall down. This is the top Conquerors in the sea, especially with the quadruple blessing. It can not only survive with strong will. Terrible confrontation. As if in hell. Forcibly supporting his body with a weapon to stand up, Hua Xiaoshan sighed with difficulty. Those still standing on the field are mostly Rear Admiral and above, or the captain of the pirate captain, and the rest are unconscious and piled on the ground. The deepest feelings are undoubtedly people like Doflamingo who also have Conqueror's Haki. He is proud of the degree of training and excellent, but in front of these monsters, it can only be said that it is like a young lion against a dragon, and the gap makes his body tremble. And Doflamingo is already considered good, like Luffy who has this potential but has not yet awakened, has already passed out. After ordering the subordinates around to detain all the Straw Hat crew, Crane Vice Admiral looked at the confrontation battlefield, and the Straw Hats were no longer what she needed to pay attention to. Boom. The 4 are enough to be called the strongest Conqueror's Haki in the world, and they scatter in the sky while roaring. Just the aftermath of the collision has wiped out all the clouds in the sky, the sea is churning, and half of the people on the island have passed out. Originally based on strength, the Whitebeard pirates would lose faster, but Marine has a large number of people, and there was a 50-50 split. Kaido. Mord. What the hell are you trying to do? Do you want to be enemies with our 2 forces? Seeing the heavy loss caused by the Conqueror's confrontation, Sengoku shouted angrily. The Conquerors just now was completely treated indiscriminately. Do you need to ask? In this top-level war, there should be only the strong, Kaido said with an expression that didn't care about what he had done. Don't worry, I don't care who wins or loses. Maud's words changed the faces of the people in the 2 camps again, and Marine couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. If the other party didn't stand on Whitebeard's side, it would be a better result for them. I just want to bring this war to a more splendid end. Maud smiled, but his index finger slowly pointed to the air. This signature move immediately made many people look up suddenly. August 23rd, fortunately, the previous desperate island did not reappear in the sky. However, as if something was about to fall from the sky, a small black shadow fell down rapidly, magnified in everyone's eyes, and fell to the port of Marineford in the blink of an eye. Bang bang. A huge tremor sounded throughout Marineford, as if the island was shaking for it. Thick smoke rose from the ground of the blasted port. Immediately afterwards, Blue's cross flashed in the smoke. Whoosh. The electromagnetic cannon, like a laser cannon, fired several times in an instant, blasting to all sides of the battlefield. Countless marines and pirates fell to the ground directly in the electromagnetic explosion. Be careful, this is the electromagnetic gun of the Flying Kingdom. The sharp-eyed marine immediately recognized the attack and yelled. No, Marine, the resourceful General Kong Ming said, the electromagnetic guns of the Flying Kingdom do not attack like this. Because the situation just now is different from the attack method of the electromagnetic cannon of the Flying Kingdom, the series of attacks are continuous fire. The electromagnetic cannon needs to replenish energy, and it is impossible to achieve such an attack level. And there was only one black shadow. Besides, it's an electromagnetic gun, but it feels almost the same as a laser gun fired by a pacifist. Immediately afterwards, as if to show the answer, the smoke and dust slowly dispersed. The impact of firing the laser cannon directly blows away the smoke and dust that hit the ground, and also reveals what the black shadow that landed on the ground is. After seeing the figure clearly, almost everyone was stunned by the revealed figure. As if they stopped attacking for a while, their mouths grew so huge that they seemed to break through the limit of their jaws. Although it wasn't everyone, it was enough to make a large area of the venue quiet down, with cold sweat breaking out like shock. Appearing in front of her eyes was a huge body nearly 9 meters long, with long pink curly hair, a pirate hat, and a wide pink dress with a big 0 marked on it. The standard physique and appearance, even the attire, are exactly the same as that on the previous reward order. That unbelievable name was extremely difficult to blurt out from the throats of all the Marines, pirates, and people from all over the world. Big MOM. Looking at the figure with a deep memory, the faces of countless people suddenly turned pale, and deep fears surfaced on their cheeks. Just like the well-known Roger, Golden Lion and other characters, Charlotte, named Linlin, is one of the strongest pirates of the era who can rival it. It is the earliest 4 emperors, once well-deserved pirate queen. Hasn't this guy been dead for several years? Why did he suddenly appear here? The person who faced Charlotte Linlin looked like he had seen a ghost, and felt creepy all over his body. Big MOM glanced at everyone, then straightened its belly, and immediately there was a hole in its abdomen, and countless small, BIGMOM, also ran out of its body. After jumping out of this stronghold, the BIGMOMs, who were only a few tens of centimeters thick, all turned into bodies of nearly 9 meters, surrounded together, forming a terrifying army of titans. If it was the horror of eye sockets protruding before, now it is directly unimaginable that can make people's eyeballs explode. How can there be so many big MOMs? Returning to the crowd who fought each other, after noticing the astonishment of the port side, they shouted in dumbfounded. The next moment, more than a dozen BIGMOMs opened their mouths at the same time, and dazzling light continuously condensed from them. It was the familiar electromagnetic gun. A series of shots sounded, and the dazzling light pierced the sky and shot into the ground where people gathered. Boom. Explosions sounded one after another, causing the border of Marineford Port to tremble. The loud noises were like Meng waves rushing straight into the sky, and the airwaves generated by the explosions swept across the battlefield like a hurricane. In the pitted ground of the bombarded area, personnel from various forces of Marineford flew upside down and died on the spot. That's not BIGMOM. Don't forget, the soul fruit has already been consumed by Empress Hancock. Sengoku picked up the megaphone and shouted, "This thing is a humanoid weapon like a pacifist. Since it's not BIGMOM, then there's nothing to be afraid of." A Commodore Marine held a big knife directly, stepping on the body of the shaved body, and stepped forward in a blink of an eye, slashing hard on the generous chest. The sound of the collision of hard materials and the force from the countershock directly pushed it back. How is that possible? I came with hockey. It didn't take long for the unbelievable voice to be released, and the fist of BIGMOM's number 5 machine was already smashing into his chest. Boom. With just one blow, the Commodore immediately flew 100 meters away like a cannonball at an extremely fast speed, directly crashing into many houses and then passed out. Another port. "Let me blow him away." The pirate holding a heavy weapon yelled loudly at, and the rockets flew out of his hands, and fell on the other 2 BIGMDMs who walked to the battlefield. Boom. 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 Loud explosion, thick smoke billowing. But the dazzling thunder light bloomed again, and the attacking pirates were instantly smashed to pieces by the electromagnetic blast from the strafing. And the 2 BIGMOMs, without a trace of scar damage on their bodies, continued to walk on the battlefield, attacking heartily. Whether it is pirates or Marines, they are all the targets of their wanton attacks. This situation made Whitebeard and Marine forces feel particularly uncomfortable for a while. Whitebeard was fine, but Marine couldn't stop and join the pirates in dealing with the terrifying BIGMOM army. After all, if the video bug is not closed, the whole world is watching. Call out. Call out. Dazzling beams of electromagnetic light pierced the sky, and the continuous roar exploded at the mouth of the bay. Blue's high-voltage electric balls set off gorgeous fireworks one after another. Seeing that the BIGMOM Legion began to wreak havoc on the field of justice, more Marines, serving as battlefield support troops, came out from the logistics, gushing out to make up for the loss of Marine troops. At the same time, the pacifists who retreated from the ice, under the order of Jean Momoru, restarted the enemy mode and began to attack the BIGMOM army. "Attack those guys, pacifists," Zon Taomaru shouted. The same dozen or so pacifists behind them opened their mouths wide and began to attack. Beep beep. Shish. After accumulating power, there was another burst of laser fire, which was several times more powerful than artillery shells in an instant, and it only attacked the BIGMOM army scattered on the battlefield. In the next moment, from the Bygmom Legion showed a move beyond everyone's expectations. Facing the extremely fast laser, several Bygmoms seemed to be aware of the attack trajectory in advance, and directly shook their huge figures a few times, dodging the speed of the laser with extremely strange but flexible movements. There are even a few Bygmoms, with their hands crossed directly in front of their bodies, and armament hockey, which is beyond common sense, as directly condensed on the arms, abruptly blocking the laser without injury. How can this be? Countless people shouted, "This is a new world-level battle. Even if it is only a momentary action, everyone can feel that the method used by the Bygmom Legion before is exactly the hockey necessary for the strong." But since the Bygmoms in front of them can shoot light beams from their palms, mouths and even abdomen, it proves that the other party cannot be a living thing. But, since it is not a living thing, how can this group of humanoid weapons be able to use hockey? Boom. The ground shook violently. Before everyone could recover from the shock, Bygmom no directly stomped on the floor, and quickly came to the pacifist in the form of shaving, clenched their fists and gave a direct blow. The terrifying power from the natural destroyer, coupled with the damage bonus of armed color, the pacifist who can be easily blocked by explosives and shells, was directly blasted by this blow and pierced through the body full of iron sheets and instruments, directly in the hands of Bygmom. Burst. PX2. Zon Taowen yelled in horror, followed by a series of explosions, and the attacking pacifists were all killed by the Bygmom army. It is also a humanoid weapon. No one thought that the gap is so huge. You must know that previously Marine relied on pacifists to firmly occupy the advantage of the war. Although the Rear Admiral who can only master hockey can also deal with pacifists, but it is as easy as this group of Bygmom, but it is difficult to do so. Doesn't this mean that only one Bygmom has the strength of Vice Admiral or even Shichibukai? In such a comparison, everyone couldn't help but feel deeply afraid of the strength of this legion. Especially this group of monsters, but the concept of humanoid weapons that can be manufactured. Damn. On the execution platform, Marshal Sengoku's face was gloomy. Mode, this guy. Sengoku was naturally quite angry. It was supposed to be a punishment towards victory, but suddenly it was completely taken astray because of the opponent's appearance, so that he, the marshal in charge of the overall situation, didn't know where this war would go in the end. Especially at this time, the unstoppable Bygmom mechanical army, just like the pacifists before, changed the situation of the battle and completely destroyed their absolute advantage of Marine. Although the target of the opponent's attack also includes the group of pirates from the Whitebeard group. But at this moment, this land that has been abused is a land of justice that people all over the world trust. Marshal. The adjutant hurried forward again to report. Mariajoy's support is on the way. Really? After all, it was good news for Marine, and Sengoku's scowling expression dropped a little. That being the case, before that, Marine needs to regain control of the disrupted situation. Sengoku glanced aside. Because of the State and Conqueror's close-range bombardment, Ace had passed out. Although he didn't want to solve his friend's grandson himself. But at this moment, as the Marine Marshal, he must fulfill this obligation. And it can't be delayed any longer. That group of Bygmom legions, although not as terrifying as the Four Emperors, are just like those carved out of a template by Charlotte and Linlin. It is almost the reproduction talent of Steel Balloon and Natural Destroyer, completely becoming a disaster-level weapon in war. The use of hockey is even more unbelievable. At this time, even the Vice Admirals are a little uncomfortable. In addition, Whitebeard, Kaido, and Mord are all on the battlefield now. Even if the two have stated their positions, in order to avoid long nights and dreams, Sengoku must end the current chaotic trend of war, and after achieving the necessary goals, start a confrontation. The time has come. Ready to implement the execution of Fire Fist Ace. Sengoku shouted while holding the loudspeaker. Not only to inform the world who are still watching the public execution, but also to Marine at the Marine Vando Square. Boom. The huge pitch-black fist struck heavily on the naginata that Whitebeard had cut. Feeling the pain caused by the vibration, and being on the battlefield where the strong are, Kaido became more emotional, and directly incited the strength of the dragon form to launch a violent and rainy attack on Whitebeard. Kaido. Are you trying to stop me? Hearing Sengoku's announcement, Whitebeard couldn't help roaring at this moment, and sent out another airshock, shattering all the opponent's moves. Laozi only does things according to his own preferences. Kaido continued to attack, and at the same time showed an excited smile. Whatever makes me happy, then I have to do it. Also, Whitebeard, you old guy, is almost at the end, so I can't miss it. Under the attack of quick punches, the vigor continued to wreak havoc. Under the collision of the two, the red and black currents in the fight between the tyrants can't help intertwining. Ace. Slamming his fists violently, Whitebeard, who burst out with all his strength at the moment, knocked away the approaching Kaido, and turned to look at the execution platform. Crack. Crack. Whitebeard punched out, and a cobweb-like crack spread out in the air instantly. The ground shattered violently, and the shockwave brought a piece of gravel splashed by Luffy, and went towards the execution platform in a frenzied and terrifying manner. On the way, countless Marines were blown away, and they attacked with an unstoppable force. If it weren't for Ace's situation, Whitebeard's attack would be far more than that. That's too easy, Whitebeard, Sengoku roared. Knowing Whitebeard's scruples, the golden light shone, and Sengoku directly turned into a gold Buddha, wrapping the shockwave in his palm, and blasted together with the vibration. It sounded like a torrent of bells in a deep mountain, directly shaking the surrounding space to hum. The execution platform began to crack unsupportedly. Sengoku's eyes froze slightly, and at the moment when the execution platform was about to fail, he suddenly lifted the unconscious Ace up as a warning. In an instant, almost all eyes on the battlefield were fixed in the air. Boom, boom. The execution platform collapsed, but in an instant, Sengoku's cold light flickered. Armament hockey covered the palm in an instant, and two terrifying gold shockwaves, like smashing the space, approached Ace falling again by gravity. Damn, Ace. Looking at the upheaval in the sky, Marco glared furiously, and exerted his advantage of flying to the limit, almost spreading his wings and flying into the air with an attitude of burning his life. I won't let you pass like this. Accompanied by a mocking voice, Beluzolino flashed directly in front of Marco, and kicked Marco down with one kick. Then he landed steadily on the ground again, looking at the eye-catching figure in the sky. In this way, the war will be over as long as the Firefist Ace is killed, then they have completed the execution of the evil bloodline, and then there will be no damage to Kaido and Motor, and it will not affect the face of Marine in the world government. Sengoku. Whitebeard snarled and sprinted forward. Blue veins spread all over the entire right hand, and it hit the ground heavily. A space of about 100 meters exploded, and the Chinese Sengoku attacked. I can't let you influence the result of the execution. Aokiji flashed directly to Whitebeard's side, opened his hands expressionlessly, and two cold air burst out from his hands, attacking the opponent. Dare to steal Laozi's opponent? Are you pretending that Laozi doesn't exist? Kuzan. Accompanied by a loud roar, a flashing mace appeared in the air, blasting Aokiji into the air with one blow, causing the opponent to slam into the shattered house with the attack. Aokiji, who had condensed his body with an elemental ice sculpture, looked at Kaido in front of him, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, "In that case, I will return the beard to you." Who do you think Laozi is? Kaido, who was looking at the focus of the battlefield, immediately roared and attacked Aokiji. At the same time, the terrifying shockwave set off by Whitebeard quickly flew towards the shockwave blasted by Sengoku. Under the attention of everyone, the attack exploded instantly. A huge airflow erupted from above the execution platform, and the Marines within tens of meters around were swept away by the impact. Even Sengoku himself kept shaking back from the collapsed execution platform, falling at the back of the Justice Building. Although this level of vibration would cause damage to Ace's body after the collision, his life was saved after all. Ace. Looking at Ace, who was about to land, Jose's eyes were splitting with anger, his whole body shone with horror hockey. Combined with his armed colors, he rushed straight through the forest that had been blocking his movement, and rushed towards the square outside the execution platform. Because a large number of vice admirals were restrained by the Bigmom Legion, at this time, the square where the internal core combat power was vacant, unexpectedly directly let the violent Josie rush into it. Seeing that Jose is close to Ace, at this moment, it seems to be the hope of all the white groups who are incarnations. All the pirates shouted excitedly, "Come on! Josie, take back Ace. The old man is still here, it is impossible to let you pass." A burly figure suddenly appeared in front of the colliding Diamond Jose, gathered a terrifying armed look, and blasted away the hopes of everyone in the white group with a single punch. With the polarity reversed, it was Marine's turn to shout excitedly, "Vice Admiral Garp." At this time, Whitebeard, who was also unstoppable, had already approached the central square. With a dazzling white halo in his hand, Whitebeard punched Garp, who was blocking the way. And Garp, who didn't dare to look at Ace, who fell behind, and endured the pain in his heart, also turned his grief and anger into strength, and directly blasted Whitebeard with the power known as the Marine Hero. Under the terrifying attack of the two, no one dared to step forward to this square for a while. At the same time, Ace, who seemed to be colliding from a high altitude, woke up from a coma after landing. Enduring the severe pain, Ace opened his eyes, and immediately saw the two people fighting in front of him, and blurted out, "Grandpa. Daddy." Under the fierce battle, Ace's voice was well transmitted to the ears of the two, making the two sides attack involuntarily. The mutation also happened at this moment. In the square where no one dared to approach, the ground behind Ace suddenly collapsed. Hot lava shot up into the sky, directly breaking through the field where Garp and Whitebeard were fighting. Sakazuki, who hadn't shown much before, was standing behind Ace, covered in magma. The next moment, Sakazuki, who had even more lava in his hand, threw himself at Ace in front of him with a suffocating killing intent. Boom seedlings. A fist burning with lava could penetrate even flames, not to mention Ace, who was only made of flesh and blood at this time. This just happened for less than half a minute. The change was so fast that even Garp looked back in shock, only to see the broken Buddhist beads, which were scattered all over the ground like pearls with broken chains. In the Whitebeard group, countless pirates shouted for this. The next moment, a wave of conquerors, which is fragile but not to be underestimated, came from a distance. Ace. Accompanied by the panic that almost spread throughout Marineford, it was Luffy who had just woken up and happened to see the scene where Ace was directly pierced by a kainu. Excited, the conqueror's haki exploded, stunned all the surrounding sailors in charge of guarding the Straw Hats. Ignoring the abnormal situation caused by himself, at this moment Luffy actually restrained the powerful debilitating force brought by the Seastone handcuffs, bursting out with powerful force, and ran towards Ace in the square. It's just that the direction of going forward was blocked by a black shadow. "It's useless for you now, Straw Hat Kid." That figure is the prototype of the pacifist, Bartholomew Bear. His vision was firmly locked on Luffy, and he continued expressionlessly, "Fire Fist, Ace is dead, and this rescue operation has failed." "Shut up. Ace won't die." Luffy yelled angrily, and at the same time raised his fist and threw it at the big bear. It's just that under the influence of Seastone, even though the strength was raised due to anger, it was still a weak attack when hitting the big bear. But Big Bear didn't say much, looked at the furious Luffy, and took a direct shot, taking Marineford out of thin air. Immediately afterwards, he once again looked at the terrified fund crowd of the ancient Straw Hat group. And at the moment, it's not just Luffy the Straw Hat that's having a hard time taking it. The white halo was shattered, Garp's protection was suddenly weakened, and the Marine Hero was blasted out abruptly, and the building collided with it collapsed instantly. Regardless of the wounds on his body, Garp raised his head mechanically, with disbelief and unacceptable emotions in his eyes widened, and he looked tremblingly at the figure of Ace and Akainu behind him. Unspeakable anger and grief made Garp stand up, but just a few steps away, he was immediately blocked by Sengoku behind him. Marine. With a roar, suddenly, the world seemed to collapse directly. Immediately afterwards, a terrifying momentum erupted suddenly, and the Conqueror's haki, who had been suppressed all this time, swept across the sky and covered the sky in all directions. Also thanks to most of the pirates, Marine has lost consciousness under the previous Conqueror's haki hedge. Whitebeard's Conqueror's haki, which vented his anger, did not shock many people. But it is enough to express Whitebeard's anger. The son he wanted to save fell before his eyes, and this anger caused Whitebeard, who was almost exhausted, to finally burst into an unprecedented anger on the battlefield. The sea surface outside the square became violent and turbulent, and the waves boiled round and round. It was almost the peak state of flashbacks, and Whitebeard burst out with terrifying speed, instantly catching Akainu by surprise. The terrifying, shocking white light bombarded Akainu's chest, and the atmosphere was instantly torn apart. The terrifying impact directly made Akainu cough up a big mouthful of blood, as if his lungs were crushed under the blow. But after all, Admiral is the most persistent among the current Marines. After taking such a heavy blow, Akainu let out angrily. Dark Hound. The left hand suddenly turned into lava, and under the burst of energy, it punched half of Whitebeard's face with a punch at an extremely fast speed. Under such an attack, even a normal person should be in a state of death, but Whitebeard still stood like a monster, and at the same time directly grabbed Akainu's collar and threw it upwards. Conqueror's lockdown. Brush, the sharp pheasant knife condensed powerful vibration force, and slashed towards Akainu. Crack. Crack. The power of the vibration condensed in the void. In the atmosphere directly in front, there was a loud and crisp cracking sound, like transparent glass, cracks shining with subtle light, extending to the surroundings in the form of spider webs. Over the entire Marineford, the undulating white cloud in the blue sky is like a piece of broken glass, full of cracks and scratches in the blink of an eye. As the atmosphere shattered, the dense cracks could not stop climbing. Boom. Boom. In the Marin Vanduo Square, the earth shattered. Huge cracks continued to spread, and countless Marines were forced to fall into the cracks that collapsed. The entire naval headquarters building fell into violent vibrations, and countless houses around it collapsed and cracked. And Akainu, who was under such an energy attack, was directly blasted away by this blow, and fell powerlessly into the gaping terrifying abyss. Under the blow of Whitebeard's fury, all attacks were forced to stop. Daddy is angry. Everyone back off, Whitebeard is pissed. The shock spread directly to the iconic naval headquarters building. Between the two big characters of Marine, the seagull logo, which is a symbol of justice, exploded directly, and was shattered under the terrifying shockwave. Naval headquarters building, it's going to collapse. On the shattered ground, the unbelievable exclamations of the Marines came. Boom boom. The pillars were completely cracked, and the Marine high-rise building lost its load, and in response to Marine's shock, it collapsed to the rear. Sengoku's eyes were wide open, cold sweat was pouring out, and a panting voice kept coming out of his mouth. This blow full of rage directly shattered the entire Marin Fando. Daddy. Ace. Marco sweated profusely, taking advantage of all the Marines stopping their actions because of this phenomenon. He quickly flew to the square and quickly picked up Ace. At this time, no one dared to approach Whitebeard in its current state, and there was no need to stop the behavior of the Whitebeards. Being punched directly through the body by Akainu, everything is a foregone conclusion. There is no Marine to stop his behavior. After all, it is a foregone conclusion. The flame of the Phoenix can continuously regenerate people's injuries in the flames, and it is definitely one of the top abilities that makes everyone's eyes enthralled in the sea. But at this moment, Marco hated this ability. The healing flames are constantly passed on to Ace, but it doesn't stop or restore the lost vitality. Although he has only been on the ship for 3 years, Marco has always treated Ace like a younger brother. But what was cruel at this time was not only the gradually icy body in his arms, but also the corner of his mouth with a smile that really hurt Marco's heart. Ace. Marco roared with tears streaming down his face. His tragic behavior made all the pirates in the Whitebeard group feel as if their brains were cut off in an instant, and they couldn't even stop their attacks for a while. Sorry, Marco. Father. The eyelids became heavier, and Ace, who was resting on Marco's shoulder, could not stop the blood from flowing out of his mouth. In the slight panting and the weak voice, everything was self-evident. The only thing I may worry about is my younger brother. But my journey may end here. Whitebeard in the distance was silent, but tears burst out of his eyes uncontrollably. Father. And everyone. For me who has acted recklessly. For me who inherits the blood of the devil. Thank you for your love to me. Tears flowed from Ace's eyes, and after exhausting his last strength to finish speaking, with an arc of relief, Fire Fist Ace officially died. At the same time, Luffy, who was flying towards the Revolutionary Army area in the distance, at this moment, the lifecard fragments in the straw hat were completely burned out at this moment. Maud watched the scene silently. The rhythm has been disrupted so thoroughly, but fate or destiny is still the same after all. Once upon a time, the young self in the previous life also contributed a lot of tears because of this scene. But now, it's just a slight shake of the head. After all, this summit war was caused by him alone. Besides, compared to Ace's death at this moment, he cares more about the moment when Whitebeard ends. This is the highlight of Summit War. Ace. Whitebeard looked at Ace in Marco's arms with a sad look. After living for so many years, he was not afraid of death, but he couldn't accept it, and his son fell down in front of him. Especially what he said just now made him feel hard to let go. The body is almost pierced with hundreds of holes, and even half of the face has been blasted through. An ordinary person has already been buried in the ground, but Whitebeard's stalwart body is still standing upright. The big shock that covered the entire Marine Vanduo almost forced all the fighting to stop. In addition, the ending of Ace seems to have made the Whitebeard pirates lose their initial motivation to fight. Kaido also stopped attacking Aokiji under Whitebeard's anger. Just watching Whitebeard's furious behavior at this time. Marine. Give my son back. Only Whitebeard was the only one, still with eyes that devoured others, sending out continuous terrifying shocks. You've lost. Whitebeard. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several figures moved forward rapidly, except for Akainu. The other 3 admirals all appeared around Whitebeard. Beasts are dying, let alone a man like Whitebeard. Frozen. Laser. Force of nature. The attack in his hand has not been reduced by half because of Whitebeard's state at this time, leaving no spare power at all, and is bound to completely end the legendary Big Pirate. As a result, the victory has been confirmed, and the Shichibukai naturally stopped temporarily, and turned to look at Whitebeard. Daddy, Blackbeard Teach grabbed Wable, who was about to rush forward, and looked at the object he admired the most. Let's bring shock fruit back to the sea with the legendary of the strong. The next moment, the flames of the phoenix, hard diamonds, and various sword cannons blocked all 3 admirals' attacks. Don't get your way, Marine. Marco, Jose, Vesta and other captains broke through the Marine Vice Admiral's block at some point, and they all stood guard beside Whitebeard, encircling him. You have already lost, Whitebeard pirates. Green Bull looked directly at all the captain-level figures in front of him. Be obedient and capture them with nothing. Are you kidding me? When Marco was about to pounce, Whitebeard suddenly said calmly, Marco, as the captain, I will give you one last task. Daddy? Turning his head back in disbelief, Marco looked straight into Whitebeard's eyes, as if he had realized something, then lowered his head after a moment, and Gandhi said, I see. Marco, you don't blame Dad for being useless, do you? How can it be? Marco replied with a trembling voice, quickly raised his head, and stared at Whitebeard with pupils full of tears. You are the greatest dad, and it is the greatest honor in my life to be your son. That's it, that's enough. Taking a deep breath, Whitebeard held up the naginata, like the sound of thunder roaring over the entire Marineford. Whitebeard pirates, retreat. After speaking, as if he was going to use up his last strength to fight against Marine and at the same time cover his sons from leaving, Whitebeard held a weapon and rushed to the front of the square again. Directly create a horror scene where one person faces 3 admirals. In particular, Whitebeard launched the offensive that looked at death as home and exchanged life for life, which made the 3 admirals retreat for a while, especially the Green Bull and Kizaru. At the same time, even though it was a retreat, Whitebeard only attacked straight forward. This behavior naturally awakened all the pirates in the Whitebeard pirate group. Father, we don't want to leave you. Father, are you planning to die here? Countless pirates shouted for it, but under the shock of Whitebeard, the huge cracks that were separated made it difficult to return to the square area where Whitebeard was located, and those who had the strength to cross were blocked by sensible people one by one. This old man is a remnant of the old era, the new world can't accommodate my boat. Let's go, sons. Boom. Whitebeard shouted loudly, and the right fist, which condensed the power of powerful vibration, suddenly blasted out. The atmosphere was torn apart, and the distorted shock waves caused the surrounding seawater to continuously churn. No, old minister. Go. Don't waste Dad's cover for us. At this moment, the Whitebeard pirates began to evacuate. But obviously Marine doesn't intend to just let the tiger go home, even if Whitebeard is down, but there are still tricky captains. Ice Age. Aokiji's figure flashed immediately, and he flew directly into the air. His hands immediately turned into ice sculptures, preparing to freeze all the seawater again. Seeing this, Whitebeard's naginata wrapped in endless white light slanted away, and then slashed into the air. The air shock under the awakening sent Aokiji flying into the ruins again, blasting out a large cloud of smoke and dust. And after this blow, Whitebeard staggered and swayed, and only stabilized his figure after the pheasant knife was inserted into the ground. Ultimate's weak breath. Everyone knows that Whitebeard has come to an end. At this time, the sun seemed to finally shine through the gaps in the dark clouds. Under the light of the Yongwei, Whitebeard's tall body remained unshakable, majestic like a titan. Dying. Whitebeard. Seeing the other party like this, Kizaru and Green Bull, who had already moved away, did not step forward immediately, just watching like this. Even if the other party still has only one breath, they don't dare to stay and count this big man's head. Finally, the most critical moment is coming. Maud's mouth curled into a smile. The passing of Whitebeard is the biggest important turning point in the current era of great pirates. The era of riots and turmoil will usher again, breaking the restrictions brought about by conscription. It means that the most destructive shock fruit will reappear under the sea. On the Sabaody archipelago, everyone focused on the screen projected by Maud. Looking down from the sky, like a bird's eye view, you can see Marineford's embarrassment at the moment. The symbol of the marine building, which symbolizes justice, is completely in the shape of a half-ruin. Just a glance can make people feel the intensity of the war. The marine building is down. The Whitebeard pirates are retreating. Is the war coming to an end? Hey, Whitebeard. The once strongest legendary, seems to be about to die. Since Sengoku announced the execution of Ace, all kinds of situations presented in the screen, like a lot of sudden news, were forced into the minds of the crowd watching this summit war. Whitebeard. A hoarse but murderous voice came from the ruins. Abruptly receiving Whitebeard's fatal blow, Akainu endured the severe pain and walked out of the shattered house covered in blood, looking like a strong man crawling back from hell, appearing in front of people. Immediately after, with the thought that he must get rid of the evil, Akainu's whole body turned into a piece of lava, bombarding Whitebeard at the moment at an extremely fast speed. Boom. But suddenly a black shadow approached. Kaido blocked Akainu's attack with a blow of the mace, and at the same time, taking advantage of the weak state of the opponent, directly burst out the terrifying power of the Dragon Man state. Blast Akainu out again. Boom, boom, boom. The next moment, ground thumping sounds resounded around Whitebeard. The Bygmom army, which had stopped attacking before, directly replaced the area where the White Group's sons were, and protected it with a distance of tens of meters around. Sengoku looked at Maud immediately, but didn't say much. Now that Whitebeard is dying, no matter what Maud does, the end is already set. But Maud's next move made Sengoku, who was slightly relieved after winning the war, change his face. Maud threw the speakerphone bug directly in front of Whitebeard, and laughed at the same time. When a person is about to die, there is always something to say. Whitebeard, you probably have something to say. What does one mean? Not only the marine pirate of Marlene Vando, but also everyone in the world who watched the picture thought so. As if hearing Maud's words, Whitebeard's body raised his head as if rekindled. Daddy, is this guy Whitebeard still alive? Ignoring the words from the square, Whitebeard glanced at Maud, as if he wanted to see through the leader of the new era. Then he looked directly at Marine again, and Teach at the back of the crowd. Just like there will be someone who inherits Roger's will, sooner or later there will be someone who inherits Ace's will. Whitebeard's feeble voice, amplified by special loudspeakers, was clearly present over Marineford. Even if the bloodline is severed, their flame will not be extinguished. Although I have no interest, but when that treasure is discovered by someone, the world will definitely be turned upside down. Someone will find it, and that day will come. Sengoku caught the key word, recalled the bad memory, and hurriedly shouted, "Stop him." The surrounding Marines jumped suddenly, but it was difficult to break through under the offensive of the Bygmom army and Kaido. At the same time, Whitebeard suddenly smiled and looked up abruptly as if taking his last breath. Sengoku shouted in fear and anxiety, "Shut up, Whitebeard." Now, it is still a public live broadcast, but this is already too late. The deafening sound resounded in the sky of Marlene Vanduo, poured into the vast sea, and even spread to the whole world in the influence bug in Motor's hand. One Piece is real. With this final cry, the immortal legendary has finally drawn its curtain down. At this moment, whether it is the pirates, the marines, or the common people who watched this scene through the live broadcast, they all fell silent. Immediately afterwards, the whole world boiled like a pot exploded. This is a topic that has gradually declined since the era of the great pirates. That is, even the four emperors have not reported the existence of a great secret treasure. Naturally, One Piece has begun to be questioned by many people. Especially the marine under the world government's implementation of conscription, the era started by Roger is gradually coming to an end. And now, the person who said these words is one of the most dazzling powerhouses in the era of the great pirate, and even the legendary Whitebeard of the same period as One Piece. No one will doubt the words spoken by the most powerful man before his death. Maud, you bastard, is this your attention? Sengoku was furious. This is the second time this happened to him. The last time it was set off, this time it was rekindled. You guess. Maud smiled lightly, then fell from the high altitude where he had stayed for a long time, and landed firmly beside Ribbard. This move immediately attracted everyone who fell into sadness or shock. Air generals have entered. What is he trying to do to Dad? Countless people looked at Maud, and was not only regretful about his admission in person, but more about his move towards Whitebeard's deceased body. Facing everyone's eyes, Maud called Saber's name. Knight. Yes. My Lord General. The soul of the sword of the king, which had been silent at the waist, emerged and flew directly in front of Mord. Maud held the knight in front of him with his right hand, and endless darkness wrapped around Maud's body instantly. In the area under the sun, the extremely conspicuous darkness bloomed from Yi, strangely and ominously. And Blackbeard Teach, who was staring at Maud, saw the drastic change in his eyes. His body began to tremble uncontrollably because he couldn't accept it and was excited, and he couldn't help muttering. Then, endless darkness swept out crazily. The night, blessed by the pure king's soul and memory alloy, is like the dark water of Uzumaki, which is constantly condensing. Looking at the strange and penetrating darkness, the magical power that can be displayed in the sea immediately rose in the hearts of countless people. Then, what is that? Darkness. My God, could it be another fruit ability? Impossible. Doesn't this mean the triple fruit ability? The voice of the speaker couldn't help trembling, and he couldn't help swallowing because of horror. Maud moved the knight to Whitebeard, and the darkness, which even light could not penetrate, swallowed Whitebeard like a hideous abyss. The terrifying gravitational force of the black hole immediately vented, only gradually devouring Whitebeard's body, and constantly pulling him down into the bottomless abyss. Even the shattered ground under his feet was pulled by gravity and lost its appearance, revealing a barren wasteland. The vision was obviously slow to swallow, but when everyone reacted, Whitebeard's body had completely disappeared in the darkness on Maud's weapon. Dad. What have you done, you bastard? Ben suffered the tragedy of the captain's death, and saw the air general swallow Whitebeard into the darkness. As the deputy captain, Marco, who should be the most rational now, seems to have disconnected the strings in his mind. During the whistling, it turned into a phoenix, flew over the huge split canyon, and directly attacked Mord. Boom. You Blue's undead flame was directly attacked in the air. The flames were completely extinguished, and Marco was forced to fly upside down and slammed into the ground not far away. The cyan figure withdrew its swing in the air, and Kaido, in the form of a thug, landed beside Maud. At the same time, several BIGMOM legions also launched electromagnetic artillery offensives at the same time, and Haki was fully opened on their bodies, showing an unrivaled legion rally. And this is just a reserve soldier whose fruit ability has not yet been given and awakened. Only number 0 was endowed with the fortified city fruit and became a humanoid attack weapon. Ignoring the excited intense forces on both sides, Maud walked to number 0 BIGMOM, who was also protected in the center. When the fruit ability was activated, Mord disappeared in this square. Seeing the heavyweight disappear, Marshal Fang Yu Marine yelled at Kaido angrily. Kaido, you who are also 4 emperors, when did you become Maud's lackey? And he is the chief culprit who destroyed your former beast group. After the live broadcast of Whitebeard's last words, Sengoku can already imagine how terrifying the times will be. They obviously won this battle, but in the end, because of another sentence from Whitebeard, Sengoku still felt like they had lost everything. And considering Maud's various cunning methods, although he does not believe that the other party will know the result of Whitebeard's death and declaration in advance, he must be one of the culprits. After suffering this kind of loss, it is impossible for Sengoku to let the other party leave like this, but the first problem is to solve the problem of Kaido in front of him. If it's just the BIGMOM Legion plus motor, in today's naval headquarters, they have a high probability of being able to win the strongest in the world, and to a certain extent wash away the previous shame. Are you going to play this kind of useless scheming too, Sengoku? After Kaido drank angrily, he burst out laughing again. Oh lol, it doesn't matter anyway, I enjoy the fun of a strong battle, and at the same time, I will soon witness the gorgeous performance that person said. What's the meaning? Sengoku couldn't help but feel puzzled when he heard the words, but there was something unthinkable in his heart, but it was reasonable to put it on Maud. Could it be? Sengoku's face couldn't help but change. Because the other party has not shown the strange ability to take other people's fruits for a long time, coupled with the impact of Whitebeard's words, so that Sengoku didn't think about this big TV question for 10 days. Don't let the air general succeed. It was also at this time that a huge sound came quickly through the side battlefield. It was Blackbeard Teach, who was very excited after seeing the dark fruit, and after seeing Maud absorbing Whitebeard into the darkness, he had bad thoughts. Because this behavior was exactly the situation he had planned for so many years. The white group also heard the voice and looked at Teach, wanting to kill him on the spot. But ignoring those fiery gazes, Teach continued to shout. The air general just showed off the dark fruit. He has the power to take away the fruits of others. Air general, he wants to take the old Whitebeard's fruit away. Everyone's expressions immediately changed. That fruit is the most destructive shock fruit. For a moment, even without Sengoku's order, all the Marines who had almost stopped fighting burst into a terrifying momentum, and the white group of pirates blasted towards the center where the BIGMOM army was located. It's just that all long-range attacks were blocked by the strongest barrier composed of steel balloons and armed colors. At this moment, even Wilbur shouted and rushed towards the BIGMOM army, because that was equivalent to his 47 father legacy. Suffering an all-round attack at once, even the multiple BIGMOM legions couldn't bear it at this time, and several of them were scrapped at once, and a hole was also drawn at the same time. That is to say, grasping the timing when Kaido was blocked by the Green Bull, Kizaru had already flashed into the air of number 0 BIGMOM first, crossed his hands, and countless laser cannons immediately bombarded like a storm. Those are all attacks with high-level Haki added, so taking such a full-strength blow may not be enough for BIGMOM itself, let alone a clone that is not qualified for Haki. Unit 0 BIGMOM also opened the switch on the abdomen at this time, but it was not hit by a laser cannon, but the gate opened like a fortress. Next moment. Boom. The huge roar that sounded like a giant bell ringing the world suddenly sounded. Immediately following the 8-foot Chong Guyu in the sky. Crack. 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 A clearly visible crack appeared above the atmosphere and spread rapidly. The space was shattered, and countless laser cannons roared in midair under the vibration energy. Immediately afterwards, the terrifying vibration energy did not slow down, and it still bombarded Kizaru unscrupulously. Like a laser beam, Kizaru was blasted to the rear of the battlefield, blasting out huge energy fluctuations. Those who have watched the entire Summit War are no strangers to the attack that shattered even the atmosphere. At this moment, the world fell into silence. Is that Shock Fruit's ability? What is the situation? Could it be that Whitebeard is not dead yet, or is it that the Air General really got the world-famous powerful power of Whitebeard through another channel? So, under everyone's attention, Mode just jumped out of the strong city and returned to normal size. The remaining BIGMOM Legion also returned to the body of number 0 machine after Mode appeared. Holding Chu Sakura, who has been injected with shocking ability at this time, the world's most powerful blade of destruction, Maud's eyes flashed with excitement, and then launched an offensive against the somewhat dilapidated naval headquarters. Is this the simple and brutal ability of that old Whitebeard? During the speech, Mord held the Autumn Sakura, and his left hand suddenly crossed, as if he was accumulating power. Immediately afterwards, at the hilt of Chu Sakura, the sword was like white smoke winding around the hilt, and the next moment, circles of white halo appeared at the sharp edge of Sakura Chu. Anyone who saw this scene couldn't help but be shocked. How is that energy fluctuation possible? Seeing this, Sengoku shrank his pupils and shouted. Stop it. Maud. Responding to Sengoku, it was Maud who slashed down hard with a slash of shock energy. Under the slash, the atmosphere instantly shattered, and centered on the blade of Chu Sakura, the atmosphere instantly split apart like a radial spiderweb. Click click click, the power of the vibration condensed in the void. In the atmosphere directly in front, there was a loud and clear cracking sound, just like transparent glass, with cracks shining with subtle light, spreading towards the surroundings in the form of spider webs. As the atmosphere shattered, the densely packed cracks kept climbing. The sky, the earth, and the sea all vibrated crazily. The entire Marineford once again fell into a catastrophe like the end of the world, trembling violently. Boom. Boom. ____ in Marin Vanduo Square, the ground was shattered by this blow. This time, it landed firmly on the huge building in Marineford, the headquarters that had been shaken to pieces by Whitebeard before. Under Maud's powerful blow, it collapsed instantly. At this moment, the world fell into silence. That's the power of Whitebeard's shock fruit. Dead. Whitebeard's abilities. Why would the Air General use it? And the previous darkness, how many fruit abilities can he have? The moment she heard the news, Marine's heart began to collapse somewhat, and the world fell into a turbulent chaos. The fear of shock fruit's destructive power hasn't gone away. It is even said that an existence more terrifying than Whitebeard has obtained this power. Gather Golden Lion and Whitebeard 2 peak paramecia, fluttering and trembling. The world. The sky is about to change completely. Maud. Sengoku re-emphasized the golden light Buddha, the palm shockwave emerged, and he roared with a full face. Boom. Invisible fluctuations distorted the space, and countless sawdust and gravel flew upside down. Looking at the incoming attack, Mo Dachu made another slash to Sakura. Under the shock, the shock wave of the great Buddha broke through all of them, and just the remaining power made the ground break several holes again. It's really scary. Shock fruit is the most destructive fruit. After blocking the blow, Maud held Chu Sakura tightly while feeling emotional in his heart. Originally because of the feedback side effect caused by the powerful vibration, but also because of the blessing of the black knife in the alloy metal composed of Kaido and Charlotte Linlin, it has no effect at all. Feeling that the effect has reached the level of satisfaction he imagined, Maud did not frantically show Blackbeard's upstart appearance after being shaken in the original book. What's more, judging from the current situation of stabilizing the world, Naval Headquarters still needs to exist, and Motor didn't intend to take this opportunity to completely destroy it. The ground beneath Maud's feet began to shake violently. But this time, it wasn't caused by the terrifying shock, but by Maud's own ability, which is famous in the sea. The surrounding tens of meters of the ground directly shattered, and under the effect of Piao Piao's ability, it began to slowly take off with the big Momo and Maud. Seeing this, Kaido also began to transform into a blue dragon and flew over Marineford again. Then, goodbye Marine. Maud smiled and looked at the angry figures below. Congratulations on your victory on the battlefield. And this is obviously Maud's contented preparation to leave after achieving his goal. Some people began to breathe a sigh of relief, but some people refused to let the other party go. Don't try to get out of here alive, Maud. Terrible lava erupted from both hands, and Akainu, who had slowed down his body, directly faced Maud, who had lifted off, and blasted countless high-temperature and terrifying meteor volcano. Seeing this, Maud smiled lightly. Night, immediately, the saber at his waist was wrapped in terrifying darkness and stood in the air. The black hole that devours everything is condensed on the blade, and it is completely compounded with the sword force when Yi is completely controlled by Maud. And this fulfilled the condition to cast Motor's other terrifying ability. Facing the large-scale lava that came from multiple attacks, Mo bestowed the darkness on the sword chi, and slashed out loudly. It was originally only a few meters of darkness wrapped around the whole body, but the moment it was cut out, it directly turned into a huge black hole like a monstrous sky, which unfortunately appeared. That is no less than the extent that the dark cave can cover the entire town. Countless meteor volcanoes were mixed with other attacks, and there were also showers of light beams, all of which were engulfed by the black hole, without causing the slightest wave to the darkness. The black hole condensed in midair exudes its terrifying gravitational force, pulling all the marines and buildings on the ground in all directions. Hoo! The violent hurricane roared so loudly that it was difficult to open your eyes. Marlene Fando, who was already in pieces, had several pieces of soil that kept breaking apart on the ground and being pulled in by gravity. The weaker marine couldn't even stop his body, so he was swallowed into the black hole abruptly. After a period of time, the black hole stopped working. Liberation Bottom. Under Maud's order, Yi immediately displayed the corresponding ability. The black hole that spread into the sky suddenly opened its mouth like an abyss. Countless marine and gravel and sawdust, like the wreckage that had been filtered out, were spat out by the black hole and fell back to the ground of Marine Vanduo. Mord left this focused summit war as easily as he came. At the same time, it also stopped the influence bugs broadcasted all over the world. But after a terrifying blow from the black hole, the ruin-like island image of Marineford after the complete battle is still caught by all audiences around the world. Looking at the culprit that aggravated this change, countless marines wished to solve Maud's anger on the spot, but they had nowhere to vent. This is especially true for Sengoku, who is in charge of the overall situation. Looking at the naval headquarters under this victory, and thinking of the approaching chaotic era, and the terrorist threat of Mord in charge of Junjen, he really couldn't help but feel miserable. He punched heavily on the barren ground. After a long while, Sengoku suppressed his emotions and ordered loudly, "Everyone, rescue the injured immediately. Marshal, the remnants of the Whitebeard regiment have also left from the port, shall we pursue it?" As early as Maud was planning to leave and draw out the black hole, the remnants of the White regiment had consciously gathered on the last Moby Dick, and quickly left the port overseas. No, it's important to save the wounded. The war is over. The first is the stop-loss for Marine, and then the follow-up events of the war. Under the command of the Marshal, Marine's medical troops rushed out from the reserve and began to rescue the wounded. And not long after, the clipper from Mariajoy came quickly from the distant sea. After seeing the situation of Marlene Vander with his own eyes, he got a general idea from the image bug, and the alternate Admiral Chafu couldn't help but mute his voice, and didn't even notice that the toothpick fell out of his mouth. The commander-in-chief of the world government, Kong stood at the bow of the ship, his brows were tightly knit together, and his expression was also extremely ugly. Through the broadcast of the image bug, he also knew that things were going out of control. Whether it's Whitebeard's proclamation, or Maud's control over Whitebeard's shock ability. This. Sengoku. Marineford. After the ship arrived, Sora quickly found Sengoku. But he found the expression of the subordinate who once took over his position, as if he had aged several decades all of a sudden, full of decadence. We still lost this war. Sengoku looked up, his eyes were red. Kong's face also darkened. We are late. Sengoku shook his head, as if to save him from feeling guilty about it. The chief of staff, Crane, came from the side. Although we have won the confrontation with Whitebeard, the loss is too great, and Whitebeard has brought the sea back to the most turbulent period. Let our efforts of more than 10 years fall short. There is also the follow-up impact caused by Motor, which is difficult to estimate. In addition to lion fruit and momo fruit, he also has that weird darkness, and a shock fruit that can destroy the world. However, darkness and tremors should be the products of our scientific research team. They can feed devil fruit to weapons or something like that. Whether it's the shock fruit or the weird dark fruit, the effects are displayed through weapons, but it seems that Maud has some means to bless these powers with the momo fruit. Just thinking about shock fruit paired with Momo's amplitude, shock fruit will show more terrifying power than Whitebeard in Maud's hands. Crane's expression is very ugly, but facing such an enemy, as long as is a marine, it is the same. This feeling reminded her of Rox, the former overlord of the sea. But Maud's feeling at this time is already more terrifying than the Rox once. Whether it is strength or strategy, this kind of enemy is the most difficult. And at that time, Garp was still in his prime, even with Roger's help. Listening to Suru's analysis at this time, both Sengoku and Sora fell silent. However, it seems that in order to alleviate the bad mood of Crane and Sengoku at this time, Sora still opened his mouth to reveal some more advanced confidential information. Actually, there is information about Mord's flying kingdom. The world government has sent people into the inner circle. The two take your arms, they won't let go. As Kong said, he pointed to the sky deliberately, and then continued, because of the huge power of the Fikong kingdom, there is a sea emperor who is willing to cooperate with us to limit the opponent. This sentence made Sengoku and Suru's eyes shine. Today's 4 emperors, but there are only 3 left. Except for Kaido, who is almost on the side of Mord in this war, there is only red hair left. Sengoku was dumbfounded. That guy also happened to be Roger's alternative heir. This is called fate. As soon as this idea came to mind, the siren sounded again from the fat port far away. Another pirate ship is attacking naval headquarters, and that is the main ship, Red Force of Red Hair Pirates. After this day, the big secret treasure named One Piece will once again rekindle this era of great pirates that has gradually stabilized. The whole Sabaody archipelago is very noisy. This is the last island before entering the new world, but all pirates with dreams will gather there. Did you hear that? One Piece really exists, that big secret treasure. Having it can even subvert the world. I must get him and become the One Piece after Roger. Countless pirates' eyes were shining brightly, and they shouted incomparably hotly in the square. Residents kept their doors tightly shut and dared not go out, carefully listening to the screaming pirates, but they couldn't stop them. They knew in their hearts that this era would once again welcome the frenzy of the era of great pirates. Something called ambition is constantly growing in the new era. Next, it will be the time when the irresistible torrent of history will come. The battle that took place in Marineford has come to an end, and it has been a whole day since that earth-shattering public execution battle. And this time, extremely uncommon. As the initiator of this summit war, the world government did not bribe the World Economic newspaper to convey the process and results of this war in a way of avoiding the important. After all, under Motor's omnidirectional live broadcast video with almost no dead angle, the whole process of the war was witnessed by the whole world. Even some ordinary people who don't pay special attention to the world's live broadcast images are processed by countless reporters and turned into newspapers and spread all over the world. Marine won the confrontation with Whitebeard Marine, successfully under the influence of 4 emperors Kaido and Air General, ended the legendary pirate, Whitebeard, Edward Newgate. Amazing speech. Whitebeard speaks out for Roger before he dies. The big secret treasure really exists. 1 emperor falls, 3 emperors come together. Red Hair Pirates rush to the battlefield, take away the remains of Firefist Ace and Whitebeard's favorite knife. Who wins this war? Not Marine. Not the Whitebeard Pirates, but the king of the new era, Air General. The technology of flying kingdoms surpassed the world government? Bygmom reappears. Inherit the terrifying talents of the original 4 emperors. Steel balloons and natural saboteurs. Overwhelm Marine's new weapon pacifist. Lion fruit and shock fruit. Flying general. 2 world-destroying abilities come together. The strongest monster in the world. Multiple abilities are an illusion. The 2 knives on the waist of the parachutist are the key to storing abilities. 2 top-notch weapons. A darkness capable of taking the fruit of others. A shock capable of destroying the world. In just 1 day's work, various newspapers have already spread the information of Summit War crazily across the sea. Compared with the protagonists of this war, Whitebeard Regiment, and Marine, Maud, who entered Midway, obviously received more attention. In particular, this war, which was almost broadcast live all over the world, was more terrifying than the previous war with Bygmom. For a while, almost everyone in the world knew about Motor and was deeply shocked and terrified by his terrifying power and strength. At the same time, there are also the vast majority of people who are afraid of the prestige of the flying general, but their greedy eyes are on the 2 weapons on his body, and even the vast majority of people are not swordsmen. The concept of a weapon with unparalleled destructive power and the ability to seize others can already be regarded as the top treasure of the sea, and its audience even surpasses the top level of the supreme sword. Because of this, countless people became greedy. If they get that knife from shock fruit, they could be another Sunbeard. And if they get the weird dark knife, they can become devil fruit predators, and this temptation is not small. Holding the newspaper in his hand, after leaving Marineford, Blackbeard deliberately walked together with the powerful Edward Wable in a cooperative way. Leaning over to look at the newspaper in Teach's hand, Miss Bajin asked, "What's the matter? Do you want to get these weapons too?" Thief, ha ha ha, of course, who wouldn't want such a terrifying weapon? Teach laughed, without expressing the deeper meaning of the 2 things in his heart. Especially the 2 fruits are given on weapons, he still has a chance to get them. Sure enough, as long as you persevere, there will always be hope. Indeed, but this weapon has inherited Newgate's ability. Miss Bajin said and patted Wable next to him. "My silly son, you must obtain this weapon, it is equivalent to his. The inheritance should be left to your own son." Mom. I see. Wable Kaido immediately. Blackbeard looked at the mother and child in this weird relationship, and smiled cryptically. Even if it was only a day's work, he could see that Miss Bajin was the best weapon to control Wable, and he might be able to grasp this key, to make Wable completely become his capable subordinate. 1 day later, when the whole sea was boiling with the message of Summit War. Mord has returned to the Flying Kingdom. Lord Maud, I miss you so much. Immediately, Hancock twitched his hot figure, and flung himself into Maud's arms coquettishly, looking like he hadn't seen him for a long time. It's only been 2 days since Kung Fu disappeared. Perona, who was floating in midair next to her, bared her teeth and complained. Maud helped Hancock's delicate face and said with a smile, "That's really hard. Hancock has been waiting, come and find me directly at night." This kind of single-mindedness of the proud empress, Maud still likes it very much. Hearing this, Hancock immediately cupped his beautiful face with both hands, and murmured to himself in a low voice, I am so excited, it's hard. Can I have a romantic night for 2 tonight?" "No." Yamato's voice directly interrupted Hancock's reverie, and the white-haired figure immediately encircled Maud's arm, letting him flow into a soft warmth. "I also waited for Maud, it was very hard, I want to reward." Although Yamato still has a somewhat girly heart, after going through the process of being a female adult, he has become more and more knowledgeable, especially the competition with Hancock. Undoubtedly, these words aroused Hancock's dissatisfaction. He pointed his index finger at Yamato angrily and said, "You guys have been eating, drinking and having fun for the past 2 days. Yamato blinked guiltily, and at the same time retorted immediately, "No way. And how can you let this guy occupy Maud alone for 1 night? Don't think I don't know what you are thinking." The staring and staring between the two, anyway, Maud is used to it, and often thinks that the more such behaviors, the better. After handing over the out clothes to the maid Baby5, Maud's thoughts also became somewhat empty after returning to the place of origin. The time for change is finally here, and in 2 years, interesting things will follow. The moon and stars are scarce, the flying kingdom of lights. At this time, after returning to General City, Motor also returned to his usual extravagant and casual life. After biting into the kebabs handed by Nami, it didn't take long for Karina's wine to follow. Maud took a sip, and after drinking the barbecue and wine, he sighed comfortably. Sure enough, such a day is comfortable. She smiled lightly, and then processed all kinds of food that Maud liked, and put them in Maud's mouth. Of course, it was inevitable to import food for a while. Seeing Shi's action of still serving her after rolling her charming eyes, Maud couldn't help laughing. 18 years of time can be said to have completely changed the time and the sun in the heart into his dominant form of. This also made Maud want to know what kind of pleasant shock the Wano-kuni ghosts will receive when they see this scene 2 years later. However, there are only 2 years left before the decisive battle you want to start after the Summit War. Gion at the side table asked with great concern, 2 years, is it enough? Even though the current life is more cheerful and comfortable than the marine where he was, Gion has not forgotten the wish to make the decision at the beginning. And when Maud has been regarded as his own man and relied on, even if it is not for himself, because of Maud Gion, he must pay more attention to this. For the time being, we have laid enough hole cards, but Gion, your consideration is also in place. After all, the more hole cards, the better, especially in the decisive battle. Maud began to think in the main seat, tapping his fingers one after another like raindrops. The ultimate legion with fruit ability and awakening, the multiple world-destroying abilities he can display, Karina who has become a world-class singer, the Shadow Guard who has penetrated into the core force of celestial dragons, and the anti-bone bomb created by the Smile Fruit. All of these can create considerable benefits for him in the battle against the world government. And he also has 2 temporary allies, the Revolutionary Army and Kaido. Plus he has Shirahoshi, who is already able to use the power of Poseidon, and the top battleship, Pluton. Thinking about it this way, even in the face of a behemoth like the world government, it is not impossible to fight against it and win. But to say that the only thing that is uncertain is the existing and mysterious world king I am in the world government. And what is the national treasure of celestial dragons, and whether it has anything to do with Uranus. Maud tapped the table with his fingers and said, Zo, does any of you know? The country on the back of the giant elephant? Robin said. It was a giant elephant tens of thousands of meters high, named after the land on the back of the elephant owner, with forests, rivers, and a unique fur tribe civilization, also known as the country of Zowu. Maud nodded. In the whale tree at the top of Zo, there is a piece of Red's road sign history text. Then let someone bring it back. Hearing this, everyone was a little bit strange. After all these years, it was the first time I heard that Motor took the initiative to collect the historical text of the red road sign. Clear. Robin also flashed a little surprise, and immediately wrote down the information, and only passed it on after the banquet was over. Speaking of which, Maud, do you know the 4th signpost? Gion couldn't help but ask. Based on what she thought, Maud's sudden order should be more or less related to the complete information of Raftel. And according to Whitebeard's words, it is not guaranteed that the big secret treasure can also become Maud's hole card. Sauda didn't know how Gion's thinking deviated from his, but he didn't use it very much to read his inner thoughts for his retainers. If I'm not mistaken, the last road sign for Raftel is probably at Albav. Albuff? Hearing this name, Gion or the retainers present were no strangers. Especially Pudding, but according to Maud's request, he changed her sister's wishes and sent her to that country. The prestigious Titan Kingdom, also because of the settlement of Bigmom and the subsequent marriage relationship, the Flying Kingdom and Albuff have privately established friendly relations. Does it need to be picked up, or should Lola be in charge? Robin asked. Yamato, who has been working as a rice cooker, heard this, his eyes lit up, and he hurriedly said, Oh. He also noticed that he was eating food in his mouth and couldn't explain clearly. After swallowing it in one gulp, Yamato patted his chest and said, Let me go, I haven't been to Albuff yet. Titan country. Yamato has always had a strong vision when he read fairy tales when he was a child. That said, I kind of want to go too. Mihawk, who has always been half of the transparent people at banquets, opened his mouth, causing many people to stop eating in shock, looking at him. Seeing that his words seemed to have attracted everyone's attention, Mihawk thought for a while, and added lightly, I want to see the special moves there. After saying this, even Zoro became interested. Being positive is a good thing. Lafitte said, but what Lord Maud said is still speculation, and he hasn't made a decision yet. There is no problem going to. Since it is a guess, it is always necessary to go through the method of elimination to determine the correct answer, but it is just you, I am still somewhat worried. Maud looked at the few people who wanted to set off, and then looked at Robin. If you go to Albaff, you still need Robin to take charge. Hearing this, Robin winked playfully. As the manager, she has rarely come into contact with travel tasks, but since it is Maud's request, she will definitely follow the action. However, there is no need to worry about these for the time being. In the short term, Robin, you may have a bit too much work. After this summit war, there are not a few guys who peek at the weapons in his hands and the BIGMOM Legion. Holy Land Marriajoy. Between powers, luxurious and luxurious conference room. 5 old men of different shapes sat around on the sofa again, their faces full of coldness and seriousness. The entire room was filled with a heavy and oppressive atmosphere. This time, they were not in charge of convening in the form of the initiator as usual. Instead, the 5 elders with the highest power in each field, after the summit war, they put down all the important tasks in their hands and came to this field independently. After all 5 of them could have predicted the severe impact that the events of the summit war would bring to the world. If it is said that the era of the great pirates has been restarted, this can still be accepted by the 5 elders. After all, it is just making the era move towards an unstable situation. The year of prophecy in the correction era will also come, and these are all things that can be solved just right, not to mention that their seraphim has also entered a state of completion. The only thing that can't accept is what Maud showed in this war, and the momentum after gaining Whitebeard's ability. In the past, because the national treasure and the adult would wake up again in the long river of time, they would not feel too nervous about the rapid growth of Maud's power and strength. But now, Momo Fruit plus Lion Fruit's continental fall. Momo Fruit plus Shock Fruit's world-class destruction. Just thinking about it makes people shudder. Although I'm glad that Maud didn't explore the final island Raftel like Roger, but the degree of trouble is higher than Roger, who is like an adventurer. That guy doesn't seem to be satisfied with this, and he continues to accumulate his own powerful strength. It's hard not to believe that he has the same goal as Rox. It's not a very wise choice to challenge the opponent now. Because of the lion fruit, it is difficult for us to implement a warship-style subjugation station, not to mention that now we have the ability of Whitebeard. Director Whitebeard 5 Elders had a gloomy face, flipping through copies of information about Flying Kingdom and Mord in his hands. Holding a Taidao, the bald 5 Elders raised his glasses and said, "But aren't his 2 abilities reflected in his 2 weapons? If we can destroy or even take away his weapons, it will be weakened." Maud's purpose. Sacrificing Stussy? Asked 5 Elders of the diplomatic faction. The bald-headed 5 Elders took a sip of tea, his eyes were filled with unquestionable expressions and said, "The restart is approaching, and it is not so important for Stussy to capture Maud, not to mention that Stussy has not achieved the perfection we expected, no matter is it Maud's actions this time, are those big MOMs shown." Therefore, the rest of the 5 Elders nodded, and decisively marked the chess piece that might be in danger as a sacrifice concept. Then let the shields accept this task together, and by the way, can you try to steal the data, materials and other information of those artificial weapons? In addition to fighting against Mode, the BIGMOM Legion is also one of the main concerns of the 5 people present. No one expected that the Flying Kingdom could manufacture humanoid weapons by such a coincidence, and its speed and ability far surpassed Seraphim's. They just used the comprehensive constitution and skills of all previous Shichibukai, and the Flying Kingdom directly used BIGMOM, a natural destroyer and steel balloon grade. Comparing the gap between Shichibukai and 4 Emperors, all aspects are simply crushed perfectly. According to the extracted damaged BIGMOM bodies on the battlefield, Vegapunk analyzed that the structure is a special alloy with strong anti-inflammatory, anti-violence, hardness and resilience. It is undoubtedly an imperial-level metal that is no less than seastone today. Blonde 5 Elders clasped his hands together, stood in front of the table and continued to explain. And that's not all. The real value of this metal is that it can achieve the memory form of a creature, that is to say, it can make the biological factor work to the greatest extent. Mechanically. After saying this, the faces of the other 5 Elders brightened. Although they didn't know much about it, the progress of Vegapunk not long ago was sluggish on this point. Can this metal be analyzed? Research and development technology, we must master. It takes time over there. The blonde 5 Elders shook his head, and speaking of Vegapunk, he is strongly requesting to go to Eggpoint Island for other technological experiments. It doesn't matter. It must be because of his dream of energy for all mankind. Anyway, it is a good thing for us. That's right, as long as he doesn't touch some forbidden items. Just as the world government was discussing and analyzing this intensely. On a small island on the Grand Line. Smoky, less windy. Here is a vast expanse of white, with white sand everywhere, it looks very barren. This is an uninhabitable area, but here is the headquarters of the vicious forces of revolutionaries. Drago, the leader of the revolutionary army, clenched the newspaper in his hand, and in just an instant, it was turned into scum and was swept away by the wind. Returning from the rooftop, in the spacious conference room below, almost all the main cadres of the Revolutionary Army gathered here, each holding the newspaper that Dorag read in their hands. Because of the action video not long ago, the information they obtained was uncommonly a day late. Hey, Whitebeard lost. In this war, Firefist Ace and Whitebeard die. The newspaper also said that Luffy the Straw Hat is your son? Drago nodded, and said very calmly, yes. Huh. Countless people shouted in surprise, but a young boy with blonde hair and blue clothes couldn't help but stop because of the information, and tremblingly walked to the newspaper, picked up a copy. That's your son. We've never heard of it. Does it matter? At the end of the war, he and those fellow pirates seemed to have disappeared. They were rescued by the Big Bear, and in the news they conveyed to me, they will be photographed on the territory of the Revolutionary Army. Drago looked at the main cadres, and continued, now they should still be flying over. At this moment, a shrill cry of pain spread throughout the room, and the chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army fell to the ground under the sound of many people exclaiming, Sabo. Flying Kingdom, hot spring between clouds. Because the hot springs hold up the hot smoke, and the environment is located in the Tianting area of Zhongjun City, almost shoulder to shoulder with the clouds in the sky, hence the name. It's getting bigger and bigger. Maud, whose appearance age has been kept around 30, looks at Princess Shirahoshi, who is about to surpass her body now, and uses. He ran his hand over her pink hair. My lord Maud, I have some hair. Although the body size is already as large as in the original book, when facing friends from the Flying Kingdom, especially Lord Maud in front of him, Shirahoshi is willing to lower his head and stick to Maud very intimately. At the age of 14, he has already shown the color that is not inferior to Hancock and Robin. Especially the soft and cute character is in extreme contrast with the extremely arrogant Hancock. It is a combination of angelic face and devilish figure. Maud has a lot of personalities, especially in hot springs or on the coast. Shirahoshi and Maria can bring him explosive softness together. After all, you are in a hot spring, and your hair will always be wet. Let Maria take care of it for you later. Listening to Maud's words, Shirahoshi nodded, blushing, clenched fists, nervous shyness and the joy of being treated gently. After straightening Shirahoshi's wet hair due to the mist, Maud leaned on the rock bed and asked Shirahoshi, in the next few days, you will officially start the task. How is your ability controlled now? I have been able to communicate well with everyone in the sea, and everyone listens to me. After answering the question about his current abilities, Shirahoshi showed a somewhat nervous expression again, trembling with his white as jade hands resting on his chest. But it's my first time to leave the Flying Kingdom. Is it really okay, Lord Maud? Although she has mastered the power of Poseidon, it is the first time for her to leave the Flying Kingdom to go to sea. Shaking the earrings made of pure gold, Hancock raised his neck and looked at Princess Shirahoshi, who occupied only 1/5 of the area of the hot spring between the clouds, and Uncommon said with a friendly and gentle smile. It doesn't matter, I will guide you well then. Compared with a guy like Yamato, Shirahoshi's ability is liked by Maud-sama, and he has no competitive character. Shirahoshi is the most fond of Hankoshu among Wade's many retainers. No matter what mistakes you make, it doesn't matter, as long as you can experience the feeling of using your abilities outside, it is enough. Compared with going to sea after the final battle 2 years later, it is more appropriate to get used to it in advance. Maud comforted him, and picked up the wine saucer floating on the water. When Robin saw this, he immediately dumped the wine jar and poured wine for Maud obediently. Lift your head and drink it, the hot spring will warm your body, and the strong wine will warm your heart. Speaking of it, even if he became the king of the world in the end, he would just continue to maintain this kind of life. But that position is what he has to do now, after all, he is the #1 threat to the world government now. Shirahoshi looked over with longing eyes as Maud sighed. Lord Maud, as long as I behave well in 2 years, will it really be possible for everyone on the Fishmen Island to live under the sun like everyone here? Although Shirahoshi and Maud are not usually close since they were raised since they were young, the good ideas instilled by Princess Otahime have become one of Shirahoshi's most important goals. Of course, as long as the obstacles are down, the dream of the Fishmen Island can be easily realized. Motor laughed. Shirahoshi blinked with joy, then cutely clenched his fists, which were as tall as Nami and others, and said, then I will try my best to let everyone in the sea get rid of those bad guys. Drive away. These words were uttered from Shirahoshi, who was as pure as white paper, and immediately brought a strong sense of disobedience to others, but she and the others couldn't help but roll their eyes at Maud, who had a kind of pursuit of teaching bad children discuss. As for Shirahoshi's answer, Mord smiled with satisfaction. As a Poseidon who needs to be of great use, he must hold an absolutely hostile attitude towards the enemy, and cannot be affected by his kind and benevolent character. Afterwards, let her go to sea to use her ability, but it was also for this training. In other words, when Zo's action will be prepared, it seems that he has heard some joy from Shinobu recently. Gion half lied in the hot spring, stretched out his long legs and swayed, bursting the fragrant bubbles of the hot spring one by one. Black spider and letter tattoos flashed as if they were alive in the water. Is that so? But when I mentioned Zo, I thought of another good idea. Motor seemed to follow the other party's movements, shaking the wine glass in his hand, and then looked at the long-haired girl named Blue in the younger generation, and said with an interesting smile, Nuo Kagao, can you tell me about your dumpling ability? How about making creatures like Zo obey your orders? Huh? Me? Nuo Kagao pointed to himself in surprise, then thought for a moment and gave the answer. It stands to reason that as long as it is an animal, I can use the ball to control it, but I don't know much about the big one like Zowu. Since this is the case, then you should also go together. If you succeed, your ability will bring a powerful destructive weapon, Mode pointed out. Hearing this, Gion looked at Maud. Why, are you going to take the initiative to take charge of this project this time? Of course, if I didn't leave by such a coincidence, how could those CP guys come here rashly? Maud played with the wineglass and said with a playful expression, at that time, Robin, you and Stussy will have a secret match with Stussy under the power of Wawa. As for the so-called God's shields, use the weakness given by Stussy to keep them all alone. In the Flying Kingdom. Experienced the events of the Summit War. The world is like an ever-expanding Uzumaki under the sea, slowly encompassing the entire ocean. In the current storm spot, 4 emperors, Shichibukai, and Marine are all the objects of attention. Especially after the trip to Marineford, Maud shined brilliantly. It can be said that even though countless people have set off another new world battle for the Whitebeard territory, the popularity of it is still not much higher than that of the Flying Kingdom. Especially under the high-intensity dark peripheral surveillance of the world government, even a flying warship that goes straight into the sky in a covert manner can be known by CP. Of course, this is mainly thanks to the fact that the government department has placed key chess pieces in it, so it is possible to know relatively clear and accurate information. Not acting in clothes in the form of Queen of the Pleasure District, but now wearing CPO's unique white clothing, Stussy said indifferently, look, Air General will make a special trip to Zo this time, and the Sword of Shock fruit, he didn't bring with him. Standing in the main shop of Happy Street on the second island of the Flying Kingdom, the 2 shields looked at the fleet that was gradually disappearing in their eyes, and said, of course we understand your ability, otherwise the higher-ups wouldn't let us compete with you. Handover. Deliberately pretending not to hear the disparity in status expressed, Stussy nodded and said, but is it okay for the 2 of you, shouldn't it be more appropriate to send the strongest shield? In world government and marine, there is also a comparison between status. In layman's terms, changing the identity of admiral in marine to a government agency is almost equivalent to the so-called shield of celestial dragons. It's just that the so-called celestial dragon's shield is more complicated than the marine as a combat power. Take Stussy as a comparison, her strength is only at the level of an ordinary vice admiral, but because of her rare achievements today, she has become a shield of celestial dragons. The 3 people in front of them are also higher-level shields of the CP organization, but in terms of strength, they are still a little behind the admiral-level combat power. The problem is, even if Mord is not there, even if Admiral comes, he will not dare to trespass into the core area of this flying land. Don't worry, we are not going to make a breakthrough by force. In terms of the actions of this mission alone, that shield is not as convenient as us. Shu Shi heard the undisguised confidence of the 2 of them. After shrugging his shoulders, Stussy directly took out the map of the core area and explained the location of each location. He also highlighted the scientific research base, bluntly saying that there is a high probability that the shock fruit's weapon is placed in it to undergo sublimation similar to the dark fruit. After determining the main target, the 2 shields also started to act immediately. One of the thin shields directly put his hand on the body of the other shield, and the next moment, his body twisted and twisted like a void, directly leading the 3 of them into a spin, and disappeared into this space. It seems to be in a different dimension. The scene is the same as the outside, but it is a different space, and people appear in it immediately. Stussy looked at the 2 of them, recalling the information about the 2 of them sent by Katrine. The Shield of Celestial Dragons, Dimension, has mysterious space ability, not strong offensive, but it is better in the use of unexpected and strange abilities. The Celestial Dragon's Shield, Locating, is a suspected coordinate-like ability. By imprinting the coordinates on the location of the memory, it can move and jump within a range of tens of kilometers. Both are the ability to maximize functionality. One is responsible for the concealment of the forward movement, and the other is for the evacuation of the whole body. It seems that they are very useful abilities, and they both have extremely uncommon space attributes. Coupled with the targeted training to become a CPO, it is no wonder that these two people can become shield level. It's just that the spatial ability is weird, but as long as the weakness is limited, with the strength of the two admiral alternates, it is still a problem that can be easily solved. After all, the two never expected that Stussy, who is also under the shield, would betray the gods. Therefore, when Stussy was in charge of leading the team, the positioning and dimension were very reassuring. Although through this ability, you can sneak in very well, but because of the different dimensions from the external objects, when you need to take or move the external objects, you need to return to the real space. That is to say, seeing the treasured sword with the same shape in the mission fell on the floating platform raised in the center, and even broke through the heavy protection on the periphery. Seeing no one, the master immediately jumped out of the space. Is this the shock fruits knife? It's really easy to get. Not only is Stussy leading the way, but even when the appearance is almost the same, he has no doubts about him and reaches out to get it directly. Anyway, because of the coordinates, even if the alarm goes off, they can leave here as soon as possible. It's just that when Dimension stepped forward to grab it, he found that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't take it down. Just at this moment, a woman's mocking sound sounded. Huh. The so-called Celestial Dragon's shield didn't even notice it fell into my spider web? Discovered. The thought jumped in their hearts, and then they suddenly looked towards the ceiling where the sound came from. On the ceiling, the bright blonde hair fell down with gravity, and at some point, a huge beauty spider wearing a kimono was looking down on the two of them. Spider Maria. The two of them directly recognized Maria in front of them, and the next moment, their retreating pace was like a heavy burden, making it difficult to move forward. Maria snapped her fingers on the ceiling, and the invisible silk threads around her immediately appeared with this movement. Only then did the two realize that the ground they were standing on had already been covered with spider silk, and the saber was also entwined with countless threads. It was no wonder that the knife remained motionless even after Dimension exerted all its strength. Immediately afterwards, the virtual projections on both sides suddenly emitted a burst of camouflage light, and the general's retainers and cadres who were waiting outside were led in gracefully by Stussy under the horrified eyes of the two shields. Stussy, you bastard! Did you betray the gods? Seeing that the other party brought Maud's troops in one by one, no matter how unbelievable it was, the two already had the answer in their hearts at this moment. No, I have always had a god in my heart, but I am more willing to pursue the new truth than the ethereal one. Stussy looked at the two with a smile, especially their positioning. The ability to move coordinates is indeed very strong, but there is still a very fatal flaw, that is, you need to ensure that you are in a space where you can deploy, and it will take a certain amount of time. And these problems are all blocked by the spider silk under the feet. Walk. Even if they didn't see Mord in the famous ace, they couldn't stay here, especially at the beginning of Stussy's betrayal, and the mission had already failed. Even whether the sword is real or not is yet to be determined. Dimension immediately pulled the positioning, and suddenly broke the legs locked by the terrifying spider silk. Although the coordinates were temporarily restricted, as long as he hid in his dimensional space, there was still room for him to unfold. The ability in the hand operates directly, allowing the positioning to start as a medium, and the body slowly rotates out of the entrance of the dimensional space. Are you planning to leave now? It's very rude to leave without saying goodbye. Suddenly, a cold voice rang in the ears of the two shields, immediately making each other's hairs stand on end. When? In an instant, the dimensions and positioning tensed up, and they all looked behind the sound. They obviously have been maintaining the operation of knowledge, and have been locking on to those enemies, so what is going on with the voice appearing beside them? So, turning their heads suddenly, they saw Guillaume flashing behind them, and they panicked instantly. Especially at such a close distance, they could clearly feel the strong sense of oppression emanating from Guillaume's body, which seemed to freeze the air. This sense of oppression that cannot be detected by the naked eye makes the two shields seem to be suddenly placed in the deep sea. The pressure on their bodies is constantly increasing, and a feeling of suffocation arises spontaneously in the next moment. As the top ranks of the Shield of Celestial Dragons, they have a keen intuition far beyond ordinary people. This intuition is undoubtedly a powerful boost when they perform tasks. But at this moment, this keen intuition has become a burden instead, causing their bodies to have a more intense stress response. The bodies of the two trembled slightly, and it was difficult to restrain the panic in their hearts, and they shouted in their hearts, "How can this guy be so strong now? Guillaume, I have seen them before when they were not shields." Even if they were not combatants, at that time, Guillaume's strength was still far weaker than them. Hateful. When you understand the dimension of this point and feel the state of mind being hit, you continue to activate the operation of the department. They want to escape from here. As long as you escape into the space, you will be safe in a different dimension. The next moment, there was a slight cracking sound in the ear. But just between breaths, the sharp pain has already come from the arm that grasped the positioning. I don't know when. Guillaume has appeared not far in front of him, holding out Jinpira, and blood drips from his sword. In his field of vision, a familiar severed arm was slowly falling towards the ground, and the blood spattered by the severed arm fell to the ground as if in slow motion. And it all happened so fast. It's so fast that it seems that they didn't realize it or even reacted at all, even as if time is speeding up. Damn it. Dimension was frightened and cursed secretly at the same time. Suddenly, he used his remaining arm to touch the floor behind him. He did not give up, and more importantly, he understood that as long as he could escape into the open different dimension space, even a terrifying guy like Guillaume would not be able to threaten their lives. However, just as he was about to move, his figure suddenly staggered and sat on the ground. Only then did he realize in horror that his chest wound had been filled with countless flying needles at some point, from which he could still feel the strong pressure on his body, making him weak and unable to use his abilities. Although your dimensional ability is very weird, your weakness is still too obvious. Are you moving so slowly in front of others, waiting for others to watch you and hide in? Guillaume leisurely stood in front of the two of them, and Jinpira in his hand flashed again at a speed that was hard to catch with the naked eye. The two of them were directly hit by this blow, their limbs were crippled, and they fell to the ground. Tens of thousands of spider threads on the ground, also after Guillaume's blow, seemed to have signs of life, and began to frantically rush towards the two of them, directly wrapping them into a shape like a mummy, announcing the completion of the arrest of the two shields. It seems that there is only Miss Yuan around, we don't need to make a move. Nami looked at the shields of the two arrested celestial dragons, witnessed the slightly cruel killing, but did not feel the slightest discomfort. After all, the abilities of these two guys are still a bit weird, it's better to just make a quick shot. Hearing Nami's words, Guillaume also smiled and patted Nami's head. Although it's rare to see Sister Guillaume making shots, it feels like it's getting stronger. Kuina was a little scared by the terrifying speed of the fight just now. After all, she has the ability to see, and her vision is definitely higher than everyone present. She made a few grades, but even she only saw a few phantoms flashing by at that moment. It feels like this, even though she has become another great swordsman under the master's command, she is still far behind these veteran swordsmen. My attacks are limited to those with weaker weapons. Guillaume does have a certain understanding of her own strength. She has now mastered the awakening of the fruit, and her current acceleration is so terrifying that it can even affect a slight amount of time. But if the opponent is such as Bigmom, Kaido, and Vice Admiral Garp, who have refined their armed colors to an extremely terrifying level, then even if her slash is fast, it is difficult to cause a fatal attack. Hurt. Of course, there are not many such people in the sea today. In terms of the strength after fruit awakening, it is not an exaggeration to say that Guillaume is the most well-deserved strongest under Maud's command. With graceful steps, Stussy walked slowly in front of the two shields, then looked at Robin again, and said with a smile, "Now that I'm here, I'm a complete flyer." Regardless of whether the mission of the Celestial Dragon's shield was successful or not, she, Stussy, must have been a victim of exposure. The second half of the Grand Line, a certain sea area in New World. According to the information of the Shadow Guard and the sign of the attached life card, the Feikong Wang Quan arrived at the cloud-shrouded sky. With the advantage of flying in the air, he will soon be able to see the huge figure appearing in the distance from the boat. In the sea area ahead, surrounded by mist, a huge black silhouette can be faintly seen in it, moving along with the roar of the sky shattering moo and the sound of rolling waves. Then, is that the Elephant Master? Nuokagao, who came along with Maud, pointed to the huge monster in the distance, and said in shock. Moving his gaze upwards along the mist, he felt that the huge outlines seemed to be boundless, and the height did not reach the top. Even under the intelligence notification, it had already been expected. But the information on the paper is naturally not as good as what I saw with my own eyes, which is shocking too. The incomparably deep sea can only reach its knees, and its huge body soars into the clouds. A pile of pitch-black elephant pupils were several times larger than the battleships under their feet. Just ivory, they were as huge as mountains and islands. With a volume of tens of thousands of meters, it is one of the largest animals known in the world today. With its huge size and strength, it is not difficult to destroy an island. Boom boom boom. The turbulent waves rolled and surged like monstrous tsunamis. Under the feet of the four elephants that were like pillars supporting the sky, every slow movement could almost make the nearby ocean surge, setting off bursts of astonishing tsunamis. It was indescribably huge. At a glance, it looked like a huge mountain, but compared to it, she was just the tiniest speck of dust in it. This gap made Nuo Kagao doubt again, would the fruit dumpling be useful to the elephant owner? Looking at the gigantic Zoe, Mord also took this giant into his eyes. He was also shocked, but he soon came to his senses. No matter how frightening it was nothing more than an animal. If we say the only particularity, it has survived for more than 1,000 years and is related to Joey Boye. But these kinds of things have nothing to do with him. He is only interested in whether he can enslave this huge creature. No ki hai. Hearing Mod's order, Nuo Kagao immediately stood in front of his body with both hands, using the new effect of the dumpling fruit, using the energy accumulated in these days, directly created a dumpling of nearly half a meter in front of him. After Mod added the fluttering ability, he flew into the elephant master's body very precisely, just like invisible bacteria. After applying the dumpling to the body of the elephant, Mod looked at Nuo Kagao, waiting for the other party's answer. Closing his eyes and feeling the connection of the dumpling, Nuo Kagao quickly shook his head again and said, "No, Lord Mod, I can feel the effect of the ability on the master, but there is a more terrifying ancient consciousness in his body. I am completely can't suppress the opponent." Ancient consciousness. Mod heard the words, and continued to look at Shangchu. Is he the consciousness of this creature? This gigantic giant elephant, which has lived for more than 1,000 years, used to be the partner of the sinful Joey Boy. Because of his mistakes in ancient times, he was punished and ordered to keep walking. In other words, this order, which lasted for thousands of years, was so profound that it was difficult for Tuanzi to play a role. Then if this will be interrupted by a severe injury. After thinking about it, Mod reached out to the other battlemaid who came with him, and threw it as a weapon locker. Aki Sakura took it out of Baby Five's body with a little warmth. Mod jumped forward, opened a little distance from Feikong Wang Quan by flying, and volleyed at the side of the elephant owner not far away. The autumn Sakura in his hand began to entwine with a terrifying sword intent under the trigger of Mord. Already by adding the effect of the soul, and the soul of the king that is not inferior to Yi, Junjen and Shu Sakura can directly achieve a fusion of swords. And this can also use this sword power, combined with the effect of injuring Momo fruit, to slash 100 times with shock fruit. It is not intended to kill the elephant master on the spot, so it is only the effect of vibration. In an instant, the veins on Mod's right arm popped. Momo 50 times the air shock. Under the flickering of Chu Sakura, the ultimate sword intent and vibration are condensed. Sword chi swung out. The terrifying bright light as high as 10,000 meters, the moment it was cast, even the clouds on the sky were scratched, creating terrifying cracks. In the next moment, it directly turned into White's energy fluctuations, blasting into the space around the elephant well. Crack. Crack. The surrounding space almost covered the entire body of the elephant lord, and a cobweb-like trace of airshock burst out at once. With such a vision, the elephant owner who kept moving forward couldn't help but stop and glance around. Without waiting for this behemoth to make any other moves, the resplendent sky exploded in an instant. Boom. The terrifying energy destroyed the world, and instantly pressed towards the elephant master. Moo. The elephant lord uttered a painful cry that resounded throughout the world. The impact caused by the powerful destructive force directly caused the elephant owner, who had never left the sea surface for 1,000 years, to fly upside down out of the sea surface with a terrifying body tens of thousands of meters away, and flew out of the sea area of 10,000 meters. Zoe also experienced violent and terrifying shocks. You can even see many tiny black shadows like ants flying down from the back. Seeing that the elephant master lost consciousness directly under this blow, and was about to crash into the sea on the way to the ground, Motor immediately launched a powerful flying field, and directly raised a huge tsunami of tens of thousands of meters in one hand, directly impacting the elephant master. Dumped body. Even under the terrifying size of a huge creature, under Piao Piao's Wushuang rules, the elephant master was forced to stand on the sea surface again supported by the seawater. After finishing this trick, Mord turned around and returned to the spaceship. He didn't want to end up going to the sea to find the historical text of the road sign because of this blow. At this time, Nuoki's height also came a good news. After Motor knocked out the elephant owner with one blow, Nuo Kagao quickly took advantage of the situation and won the control of the elephant owner. At this time, under the order in Nuo Chigao's heart, he stopped his actions respectfully. It seems that this trick is quite effective. Maud looked at the unconscious elephant owner at the moment, and seemed to be able to see a chaotic darkness in his bottomless pupils. Although there are Poseidon and Pluton on the basis, like the main does not bring victory decisive role. But it is undeniable that its size can have a huge impact, and the opponent is related to the waiting Joey Boye, so it is not impossible to lay a foreshadowing. After thinking about it, Motor ordered Nuo Kagao to plant a hidden bomb for the elephant owner at this time. After dealing with the elephant owner, there is Zou Island on its back. It seems that because of the previous terrorist attack, the fur tribes on Zou have gathered together at this time, and found a flying ship in the outer sky. There are islands with an altitude of more than 20,000 meters, and Motor has come to the air on the back of the elephant owner at this moment. Forests, rivers, and buildings immediately come into view. It's just that the town was in a mess because of the previous tremor of the elephant master. You are the human being who caused the elephant master's dissatisfaction? In the land where Maud has not yet settled down in Zou, almost all the fur warriors are already looking at Maud with sullen expressions and staring at the sky, as if they are about to sound the horn of battle in the next moment. Living on the back of a giant elephant, just like Wano Kuni once, Zou is an isolated country, and the fur tribe is a fighting race that hates humans. Catch him. Use him to present a gift to the elephant owner and appease the elephant owner's anger. Human, I don't know how you came to Zou, but since you have been rejected by the elephant master, you must not be let go. An angry voice shouted from the mouth of the fur tribe. During the speech, the air area where Motor is located has been surrounded. But no one took the initiative to attack. The fur tribe retained the natural wildness of wild beasts. Although they did not fight against Maud, they still keenly captured Maud's unusualness. Only if you can do it. Ignore the many malice and clamor that came. With a wave of Maud's index finger, there were several giant roaring sounds. The surrounding old-fashioned buildings that have been dusty for a long time, directly escaped the gravity, and all floated in the air around Maud, and in the next moment, they were directly multiplied and turned into countless floating meteorite groups in the air in the blink of an eye. The fur warrior was horrified, his eyes almost popped out of surprise, and the chill was running through his bones. Under the gaze of Maud with his arms folded, the buildings flying in the air fell instantly. Block them. Seeing this, the orangutan Captain Black Buck yelled loudly. The majestic muscles soared in his arms, and with a powerful electric current, Black Buck jumped up high and punched the huge rock that hit him. At the same time, the furs of the countless warrior tribes around them exploded, their entire bodies seemed to swell, and white arcs shot up one after another. The peculiar ability unique to the fur tribe was directly used to resist the falling boulder. The boulder hit by its terrifying force made a stagnant sound. But it wasn't just one giant that landed. Like a praying man's arm blocking a car, the whistling meteorites piled up one after another, and the huge boulders that fell with terror crashed down, pressing countless fur tribes who stood up to stop them for their homes onto a street in Zou. Boom boom boom. Roaring like a gust of wind and rain, the terrifying group of rocks smashed at a speed of 10,000 meters, and a brilliant meteor shower fell on the streets of Zou. The traces of the collapse of the ground spread out in dense cracks, turning the street in front of you into ruins. You bloody human. Seeing that the homeland changed into this in an instant, and his friend died directly, the Buffalo Roddy, one of the members of the Knights group, roared angrily, and slammed into Maud in the air with his powerful bullhorns. Mixed with the increased power of the fur tribe, coupled with Roddy's angry blow, the attack could break even rocks, and it stopped directly in front of Maud's outstretched fingers. How can it be? After the attack was so easily resisted, no matter how angry Chuan-Di was, he couldn't help but scream. And in front of him, after being completely offset by the index finger, it was Maud who bent his index finger, and with the support of his thumb, made a bouncing motion. Boom. With hockey, Maud fired a direct shot, and Roddy immediately flew out like a cannonball, hitting the ruined ground. The land collapsed instantly, gravel splashed, and smoke and dust rose violently. In the huge hole is the Buffalo Roddy, whose body has been blown away by a huge force and has lost its vitality. Captain Roddy. The fur clans were shocked. That was under the king, one of the strongest fur clan warriors, and they looked up to them. Unexpectedly, a face-to-face meeting, without even a reaction, was solved immediately. This kind of strength, they are simply unheard of. Under the mournful and exclamation, the culprit, Mode, looked indifferent. He is currently in a state of strength to compete for the top of the world. To deal with these fur tribes with a limit of hundreds of millions, even if emission is not used, it is only a solid foundation for his fingers Haki can kill with one hit. Maud fell directly into the ruins of his own making. After it appeared, the surrounding fur tribes immediately retreated in fear as if they were facing a monster, without the previous clamoring momentum at all. Stop. At this moment, a shout that almost resounded through the battlefield came. With long wavy blonde hair, wearing a green jacket and a deep green cloak, a jaguar fur tribe quickly struck from a distance, which is now the padero of the fur tribe king. Seeing the king coming, the fur tribe seemed to have taken a reassurance, and slowly stopped because of the horrified expression of the enemy. Pedro, who was originally pale, changed his expression after seeing Mord, who invaded Zou. Shocked and terrified, also had a strong sense of disbelief. Different from the long-term isolation of the residents of Zou, he still has the experience of traveling as an overseas adventure team, and he is not unfamiliar with the information on the sea today. Especially when the other party is a big shot in the new world, and even the strongest existence in the new era. Even when the cat viper bosses had accidents, when Pedro went to sea, Wano-kuni paid the most attention. It's just that I didn't expect that the new king who defeated Kaido and took control of the country where Lord Odin lives would come here in person. Maud also looked at the cougar in front of him. With a good memory, he immediately recognized the fur tribe that appeared in the original book. Unexpectedly, in the absence of Inuarashi and Momomushi, it was the turn of the master writer, host. Fly. Air Admiral. Pedro, who dared to come, retreated a little because of fear, and the trembling in his words betrayed the fear in King Zou's heart. King of Zou. Maud squinted at him, his voice without any emotional ups and downs. Where is the red signpost? Pedro couldn't help shrinking his pupils when he heard this. When he wanted to say more, Pedro noticed Maud's expressionless eyes. Under those eyes, it seemed that all the secrets would be exposed without any hindrance. The dense canopy, like a huge umbrella, leaves a huge shadow on the ground. And this forest surrounded by lush trees is the Forest of Whales, and it is also considered a forbidden place by fur tribes. Pedro. Looking at his friends who were leading the way, the Lion Fur clan, who is also one of the kings, couldn't help but secretly clench his fists. It is not like the cat viper and Inulin in the original book. The relationship between the two is quite friendly, and there is no so-called day and night. Only the common management of the country, because Pedro likes to travel, so for the sake of the country, he was also supported as the king of the two kings. At this moment, Sicily looked towards his friend because he knew how much Pedro attached to the red stone. But there is no way, the opponent's strength is not something they Zou can compete with. If there is only one-on-one combat, perhaps death, Pedro will fight without fear. But the responsibility on his body is not enough. He shoulders the identity of King Zou, and what he needs to pay attention to is the tens of thousands of fur tribe compatriots in Zou. Maybe he gritted his teeth unwillingly, but he had to consider the overall situation of the king. When I was young, when the One Piece King Roger came here specially, Pedro also communicated with him, and was watching on the sidelines, so he naturally knew the history of Red. Symbolize something. After walking into the cave above the whale forest, I walked straight into the special path, and every time I reached the huge empty space in the depths. It is clearly in the tree hole, but there is a faint light coming from it. Inside the wall, under the bright light, there are the Wano-kuni Kazuki family crests that have already turned into history. Below the family crest, there is a huge, square stone, full of simple and heavy appearance, with dense historical characters engraved on it. Glancing at the stone statue, after confirming, Mo directly raised his hand to give Shang Piao Piao the ability. In front of the absolute rules, the gigantic monster nearly 10 meters high broke free from the ground and flew beside Maud. The purpose has been achieved, and Maud has no interest in staying in Zou, and left the forest directly with the signpost. And it wasn't until the other party walked out of the tree hole in the whale forest for a while that Pedro beat the tree trunk vigorously as if he couldn't bear it. Damn it. Everyone has his own moment of appearance. Pedro has always remembered what Lord Roger said to himself. Even after Duke Inuarashi, who was the most powerful fur tribe at that time, and shopkeeper Mobamushi had an accident 19 years ago, he never forgot. But the road sign that I have been guarding now is easily taken away in front of my eyes, just like the symbol I have always believed in my heart has been taken away, and I can't even resist at all. What is his so-called opportunity to appear on the stage? Is it just to hand over the thing that is guarded, and give it up aggrievedly? In less than half an hour, almost 1/3 of the town has been destroyed. Looking at the distant figure of the other party, the fur tribes were both happy and cruel in their hearts. Some hate each other, but also hate themselves. In front of this group of people, they can't even protect the country. In the air, floating at a distance of 1,000 meters away from the elephant owner, BABY5 on the Faikong Wang Quan kept looking at the back of the elephant owner shrouded in clouds. Soon, I saw a figure standing on a huge red stone, slowly flying towards here. Use the ticket to move the road sign, and at the same time, the speed of Fumo fruit is doubled. In just the blink of an eye, Motor had already covered a distance of several hundred meters, and jumped onto the deck with a huge road sign history text. The road sign fell steadily, and the heavyweight giant fell, but it floated into the calm lake like a leaf, without causing the slightest sound. After obtaining the road sign, Motor continued to control the Faikong Wang Quan, gradually pouring into the clouds. Just as Faikong Wang Quan left, Nuo Kagao also easily released the control of the fruit of the dumpling. Chatter. A loud elephant cry sounded, and the whole zoo began to shake violently. The ground began to tilt to one side, the mountain quickly collapsed, the cracks continued to enlarge, the trees fell rumbling into the cracked deep ditch, and the city buildings collapsed and shattered amidst howls. Under the impact of the sound, the sea surface rolled up waves after waves to the surroundings. Elephant Lord is angry. What should I do? Zoe is going to die. Quick. Find a way to appease the elephant owner. The catastrophe that evolved again made the fur tribes on Zuoden panic. Originally, he loved the elephant owner who carried the race on his back very much, but at this moment he didn't take into account the disaster caused by his own emotions. Palpitatingly, the elephant master stopped the limbs that had been walking, and slowly turned his head to the sky behind him. And that direction is exactly the area where Faikong Wang Quan disappeared. The next moment, the elephant master let out another cry. It was mixed with strong unwillingness and uneasiness. After standing for an hour, he continued to suffer the ancient punishment of walking continuously. In places that are difficult to notice, there are more signs of aging on the body of Shangzu. Unaware of the change of the elephant owner after he left, Motor controlled the Faikong Wang Quan to return to the voyage, but his thoughts were on the last historical landmark. At that time, he hadn't waited until the end of the original work, so in the world of One Piece, there were still many secrets that he didn't know, including the location of the last signpost. However, through the process of exclusion in the original book, the approximate extent is limited to 2 places. One is Al-Buff of the Titan country, and the other is most likely in Whitebeard's territory version. There are still 2 years before the advent of the Era of Chaos. Maud was in no hurry. However, in the past 2 years, he has to firmly grasp the power of Al-Buff in his hands. And he is already using the relationship between Lola and the Titan Prince Rocky to gradually win over this country. After Rocky fights for power from prince to king, Al-Buff will be one of his powerful forces on the day of the decisive battle. See Circle Calendar late 1520. The Age of Pirates reboot by Whitebeard is in full swing. Not only the pirates of the 4 seas are growing wildly in the underground sea, but more obviously, it is also the carnival rides belonging to Pirate Paradise, New World. As one of the most famous pirates, the Whitebeard pirates known as Legendary own nearly 1/3 of New World's treasure land. Now that pillar is no longer there, and the royal group that lost the emperor is no longer the #1 pirate group that others feared. In addition, the Whitebeard site is also one of the best treasures in the New World. No matter in terms of area or zone resources, it is not weaker than the once famous Toto Land Sea area. A powerful and ambitious pirate will naturally not give up easily. Like a bloodthirsty shark smelling the smell of flesh and blood, countless heroes flocked to launch a crazy offensive towards all the Whitebeard pirates. And in this battle, the combined army formed by Blackbeard Teach and Edward Wable is the most dazzling. Almost from the moment they seized the Whitebeard territory, they have been suppressing the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates. New World, a stronghold somewhere in the Whitebeard territory. At this time, the town has been turned into ruins, with the corpses of Whitebeard's pirates and burning buildings everywhere. Wearing suspenders, Edward Wable, a burly, fat, ugly-looking man with snot coming out of his nose, threw an unconscious pirate out of his hand. The terrifying force forced the pirate to fly backwards, knocking down the houses one after another under the impact. Seeing this, Blackbeard Teach couldn't help shrinking his eyes. With such terrifying strength, if it is matched with his own power fruit, he will definitely be an extremely terrifying top powerhouse. So why don't those bastards come out? I want to avenge my old mother. Edward Weeble asked Blackbeard Teach in a naive and angry way. Hearing this, Blackbeard smiled, and then kicked the pirate who was stepping on him again. With the increased strength, he directly knocked the opponent hundreds of meters away like a cannonball. Properly showing it in front of the new recruits, Teach just explained, "Don't worry, my brother. We are retaking Dad's property now. Those guys who claim to be Dad's sons will definitely come to us on their own initiative. Compared to us asking for trouble, letting them come will save a lot of trouble." Several question marks jumped out of Weeble's head. Seeing this, Teach said more and felt a little helpless. Kong has a terrifying physical fitness and strength comparable to that of his father when he was young, but his IQ is really speechless. But it is precisely because of this that he can control the opponent so well now. It's just that the old woman was executed secretly, and then forged the so-called suicide note, which immediately transferred the anger of the mother-killing enemy to the Whitebeard pirates. Teach didn't care about Weeble's reaction, and raised his hand in the air to make a false grab. The magnificent gemstones in his hands shone attractively under the sunlight. "Thieves, ha ha ha. We just need to wait, whether it is for your mother's revenge, or for your father's territory, only you, the true son of Whitebeard, are eligible to inherit. And I will help you together to take back what belongs to you." Hearing these touching words, Weeble was immediately moved with tears in his eyes, and covered his face and burst into tears. "Brother Teach, you are so kind to me. Sure enough, what my mother said is right. At the same time, it is located in the sea near the direction of the Sphinx in New World. Damn it, that bastard Teach not only killed Sarge. Now he is planning to join forces with outsiders to take away the territory that originally belonged to our pirate group." Joes shouted angrily, and his body, which was like a chariot because of his anger, directly blasted the giant tree beside him. After the Summit War, under the cover of Whitebeard and when Maud showed off, the Moby Dick was still in good condition, and the Whitebeard pirates returned home. Unexpectedly, just going out for a trip, in less than a few days, many house numbers in the homeland were directly seized by others, and even the wounds caused by the war had no time to repair, and they would continue to start the war to protect the homeland. With the departure of Whitebeard, it seems that the original huge pirate group also fell apart. More than half of the pirates under his command directly withdrew, and even the main ship, many people chose to quit in despair. The only ones left are the remnants of the captain, and most of the companions who have walked along the way in the long time ago. The tens of thousands of people who traveled mightily, but now the number of people after regularization is only more than 10,000. Although they are still a powerful pirate team in New World, there is no doubt that they have fallen out of the status of the Sea Royal team. "Marco, what should we do?" asked Vista. Now that the father is gone, it is natural that Marco with the highest qualifications and strength will lead the current team. "That's our home, and it's also the memory of Dad in us. I don't want anyone to take it away. Where should our Whitebeard pirates go without these places? And Teach, everything started because of him, we must not let him go." There was a lot of discussion among the people, but the topic of discussion all pointed to wanting to take back their homeland and crusade against Teach. Listening to the words of the family members, Marco raised his head and said slowly, "Then are you ready to fight for your life? If the old man is still there, he must be just like the brothers. But now that the weight of the entire team has been placed on his shoulders, he naturally needs to consider many things." Marco raised his head and asked back, making everyone silent. Although they were filled with righteous indignation just now, they just experienced the Summit War, plus the team that fell apart, they are really not such a top team. The strength of the current pirate group is greatly weakened, even if they try their best, they may not be able to protect their father's territory. In addition, they are all the sons of the father who burned his own life. Then what should we do? We can't just watch those garbage pirates take over Dad's territory like this, right? That should be our homeland. Among the pirates, there is no kindness at all. The winner gets everything, the loser gets nothing. Everyone understands this truth, but the homeland of decades, no one will accept it easily and willingly. Are we going to keep silent like this, so that the whole world will think that the Whitebeard regiment is dead? Joes raised his hands. It doesn't matter if we are looked down upon by others, but the pirates who use Daddy as their name must not let their reputation be damaged. Joes. Marco looked at the other party. Since the Summit War, his calm personality has also become more aggressive. These words definitely resonated with many people. Those who can continue to stay are naturally nostalgic for Dad's kindness to them in the glory of the pirates. "We are already prepared. Captain Marco, please say something." The voice was quickly shifted to Marco's side. Marco frowned, paused for a moment, then nodded and spoke. Since everyone has made a decision, let's protect Dad's territory together as a big family. However, with our current strength, it must be difficult to protect the home of so many pirates, Vice Admiral. So, we have to be prepared to make trade-offs. But one thing, I'm the same as you guys. That guy Teach, you can't let him go lightly. With these words, the remaining remnants of the Whitebeard pirates began to set off towards the territory occupied by Blackbeard. After receiving this information, the Shadow Guard quickly reported to Luo Bao. Similarly, in the Flying Kingdom, Hancock and others have been waiting for this news for a long time. 3 days later. Flying Kingdom. Located by the marina on the outskirts of the archipelago. There are huge crowds of people, shoulder to shoulder. As a famous general's retainer slowly appeared at the port, especially after the graceful figure of the flying snake appeared, deafening cheers suddenly erupted on the shore, and immediately spread to the sea near the entire pier. Swing away. It's so beautiful. Empress da human. It's beautiful, I can't stand it. Looking at the port, no matter men, women or children, they all shouted with jealousy, and Katakuri, who was also marching beside him, couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Even though they already belonged to the Flying Kingdom in their hearts, every time they saw Hancock, not only him, but also everyone in the Charlotte family felt an indescribable sense of complexity. After all, whenever Hancock uses the soul fruit ability, the mother's memory will emerge from the depths. But it is undeniable that this terrifying charm in various senses, combined with the mother's ability, it is simply replacing deterrence with beauty, and it is even more difficult to attract seats. Seeing Katakuri staring at Hancock and pondering, Puro on the side walked in with a smile and said, "He, Katakuri, with a cold temper like you, will be dazzled by the beauty of that snake princess well, but as an elder brother, I have to remind you that this is the adult's restraint, don't." Before Ross Puro could finish his joke, Katakuri blocked his mouth with a few sticky rice sticks. "I don't think so." After Katakuri glared fiercely at Ross Puro, he then glanced at the family members of the Desert Star. "Have you all arrived for this attack?" After eating the sealed glutinous rice, Pei Ross waved the candy cane in his hand and said, "Everything is here, just wait for 10 orders from the large army before we can set off." Hearing this, the combat power of the Charlotte family and the ministers all clenched their fists. Bree even shouted loudly, "Just now I heard people cheering for Katakuri Big Brother. This time we must take the great credit for this operation and let the pride of our Charlotte family, our favorite Katakuri Big Brother is more popular." Oh. Hearing his brothers and sisters yelling in full view, Katakuri felt a little unspeakable shame for a moment, but after feeling the strong family affection, he silently turned and looked at the other warships at the port that were preparing to sail. Pudding's family seems very excited. Nami glanced at the Charlotte family's warship. HMPH. Those guys are trying to take credit. Runti gritted her teeth resentfully. It looks like a fierce battle, Xiaopei. We must seize more Whitebeard territory in front of them, you hear me? Huh. There's no need to compare. Old lady, they are all from the same country. Oh wow. Before Peggy Wan finished speaking, she was directly grabbed by the collar by Runti, with a serious face and said, "This is war. Whoever deserves the most credit must be able to gain Lord Maud's trust more. But it's going to be the Imperial Guard Infanta brand." And Zoro, who originally wanted to say that the siblings were too energetic, couldn't help thinking, "Is this a chance to become an ace? That's really exciting." "You didn't say that." Luo became speechless. And after Hancock boarded the flying snake, he gave an order as the main attack. There are more than 20 warships with powerful and terrifying combat power. Under the watchful eyes of everyone in the Flying Kingdom, they fly majestically from the port to the coast below, and head towards the direction of the Whitebeard territory. New World, the fortress port occupied by Blackbeard. Huh. 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 The wind rose. The prominent flag planted on the fortress was directly broken by the strong wind direction. The battered black pirate flag, painted with a smiling skull with a white crescent beard, fell directly from the sky to the ground. That flag, which used to be a frightening flag, is now dilapidated, and it seems to indicate that the Whitebeard pirates represented by this flag are heading towards sunset. The flag landed on the ground, but at this time it was divided into 2 big formations, the left and right sides, facing each other from a distance. On one side is the remnants of the Whitebeard pirate group headed by Marco. Behind him, the captain of the 3rd Division, Joes, the captain of the 5th Division, Bister. The Ice Witch Whitey, the big whirlpool spider, Squad, and the Ranger. Whether it's the captain of the pirate group or the captain of the squadron, it's all here. But looking at the remnants of the White Regiment coming from such a camp, the Blackbeard Teach occupying this place laughed wildly. Thief, ha 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 ha. Marco, I didn't expect this to be the case when we meet again. These are all the remnants of the current party, right? Do you want to directly engage in a full-scale decisive battle with me? It can be said that after seeing the most hated enemy of the Whitebeard Regiment at the moment, Marco threw away his glasses, his eyes were as sharp as a knife, and blue flames burst out of his body. Teach. Everything started because of you. Let's end this ungrateful thing together today. Phoenix Seal. After finishing speaking, Marco turned into a phoenix and soared into the sky, and immediately in the form of a phoenix Haoshang, he kicked hard at Teach in front of him. The next moment, the fur suddenly swelled, and the wild boar ability was also activated. Teach picked up Constitution's swollen arm, and used the force fruit to directly blast together with Marco's attack. Feeling the terrifying power coming from under the soles of his feet, Marco's face changed slightly, and then the attack of the Phoenix Seal was directly scattered by the huge force, and a pitch-black fist suddenly slammed into his pupils. With a bang, Marco flew out. Blackbeard smiled wildly, stretched out his hand and clenched his fist, as if infinite power had been grasped in it. Marco. The time of playing house is over. Now is the time of strength. Come on, little ones. In the offensive launched by Blackbeard, the pirates who were also absorbed by Teach in the fortress all raised their knives and drew their guns, staring at the remnants of the white group. In the whistling time, the killings of both sides directly unfolded.